Audible Realms presents Beowulf, narrated by Andrew Jones. Lo, the Speardane's glory through splendid achievements, the folk king's former fame we have heard of, how princes displayed then their prowess in battle. Oft Scyld the seafing from scathers in numbers, from many a people their mead benches tore. Since first he found him friendless and wretched, the earl had had terror. Comfort he got for it, waxed neath the welkin, world honor gained, till all his neighbors o'er sea were compelled to bow to his bidding and bring him their tribute, an excellent atheling. After was born him a son and heir, young in his dwelling, whom Godfather sent to solace the people. He had marked the misery malice had caused them, that reaved of their rulers they wretched had erstwhile long been afflicted. The Lord in requital, wielder three of glory, with world honor blessed him. Famed was Beowulf, far spread the glory of Scyld's great son in the lands of the Danemen. So the Carl Four that is young, by kindnesses rendered the friends of his father, with fees in abundance, must be able to earn that when age approacheth, eager companions aid him requitingly, when war assaults him serve him as liegemen. By praise-worthy actions must honor be got, mong all of the races. At the hour that was fated, Scyld then departed to the All-Fathers keeping warlike to wend him. Away then they bear him to the flood of the current, his fond-loving comrades, as himself he had bidden, while the friend of the Scyldings word sway wielded, and the well-loved land-prince long did rule them. The ring-stemmed vessel, bark of the atheling, lay there at anchor, icy in glimmer and eager for sailing. The Beloved leader laid they down there, giver of rings on the breast of the vessel, the famed by the mainmast. A many of jewels, of fretted embossings from far lands brought over, was placed near at hand then, and heard I not ever, that a folk ever furnished a float more superbly, with weapons of warfare, weeds for the battle, bills 6 and burnies 7 on his bosom sparkled, many a jewel that with him must travel, on the flush of the flood afar on the current. And favors no fewer they furnished him soothly, excellent folk gems than others had given him, who when first he was born outward did send him lone on the main, the merest of infants. And a gold-fashioned standard they stretched under heaven high o'er his head, let the holm currents bear him, seaward consigned him. Sad was their spirit, their mood very mournful. Men are not able soothly to tell us, they in halls who reside, heroes under heaven, to what haven he hied. In the boroughs then, Beowulf, bairn of the Scyldings, beloved land prince, for long-lasting season was famed mid the folk. His father departed, the prince from his dwelling, till afterwards sprang great-minded Helfdene. The Danes in his lifetime he graciously governed, grim-mooded, Aged. 4 bairns of his body born in succession woke in the world, war troopers' leader Heorot, Hrothgar, and Halga the Good. Heard I that Elin was Ongentheow's consort, the well-beloved bedmate of the war-sylphing leader. Then glory in battle to Hrothgar was given, waxing of war fame, that willingly kinsmen obeyed his bidding, till the boys grew to manhood, a numerous band. It burned in his spirit to urge his folk to found a great building, a mead hall grander than men of the era ever had heard of, and in it to share with young and old all of the blessings the Lord had allowed him, save life and retainers. Then the work I find afar was assigned to many races in Middle Earth's regions to adorn the great folk hall. In due time it happened early 'mong men that 'twas finished entirely, the greatest of hall buildings. Heorot he named it, who wide-reaching word sway wielded 'mong earlmen. His promise he brake not, rings he lavished, treasure at banquet. Towered the hall up high and horn-crested, huge between antlers, it battle-waves bided, the blasting fire-demon. Ere long, then, from hottest hatred must sword-wrath arise for a woman's husband and father. Then the mighty war-spirit endured for a season, bore it bitterly, he who bided in darkness. That light-hearted laughter loud in the building greeted him daily. There was dulcet harp music, clear song of the singer. He said that was able to tell from of old earthmen's beginnings, that Father Almighty Earth had created, the winsome wold that the water encircleth, set exultingly the sun's and the moon's beams, to lavish their luster on landfolk and races, and earth he embellished in all her regions with limbs and leaves, life he bestowed, too, on all the kindreds that live under heaven. So blessed with abundance, brimming with joyance, the warriors abided, till a certain one 'gan to dog them with deeds of direfullest malice, a foe in the hall building. This horrible stranger was Grendel entitled, the march stepper famous, who dwelt in the moor fens, the marsh, and the fastness. The wan-mooted being abode for a season in the land of the giants, when the Lord and Creator had banned him and branded. For that bitter murder, the killing of Abel, all-ruling father the kindred of Cain crushed with his vengeance. In the feud he rejoiced not, but far away drove him from kindred and kind, that crime to atone for, meter of justice. Thence ill-favored creatures, elves and giants, monsters of ocean, came into being, and the giants that long time grappled with God, he gave them requital. When the sun was sunken, he set out to visit the lofty hall building, how the Ring-Danes had used it for beds and benches when the banquet was over. Then he found there reposing many a noble asleep after supper. Sorrow the heroes, misery knew not. The monster of evil, greedy and cruel, tarried but little, fell and frantic, and forced from their slumbers 30 of Thanemen. Thence he departed leaping and laughing, his lair to return to, with surfeit of slaughter sallying homeward. In the dusk of the dawning, as the day was just breaking, was Grendel's prowess revealed to the warriors. Then, his meal-taking finished, a moan was uplifted, mourning cry mighty. The man-ruler famous, the long-worthy atheling, sat very woeful, suffered great sorrow, sighed for his liegemen. When they had seen the track of the hateful pursuer, the spirit accursed, too crushing that sorrow, too loathsome and lasting. Not longer he tarried, but one night after continued his slaughter, shameless and shocking, shrinking but little from malice and murder. They mastered him fully. He was easy to find then, who otherwhere looked for a pleasanter place of repose in the lodges, a bed in the bowers. Then was brought to his notice, told him truly by token apparent, the hall-thane's hatred. He held himself after further and faster who the foeman did baffle. So ruled he and strongly strove against justice lone, against all men, till empty up-towered the choicest of houses. Long was the season, 12 winters' time torture suffered. The friend of the Scyldings, every affliction, endless agony. Hence it after became certainly known to the children of men, sadly in measures that long against Hrothgar Grendel struggled. His grudges he cherished, murderous malice, many a winter, strife unremitting, and peacefully wished he life woe to lift from no liegeman at all of the men of the Dane folk, for money to settle. No counsellor needed count for a moment on handsome amends at the hands of the murderer. The monster of evil fiercely did harass, the ill-planning death-shade, both elder and younger, trapping and tricking them. He trod every night then the mist-covered moor fens. Men do not know where witches and wizards wander and ramble. So the foe of mankind, many of evils, grievous injuries often accomplished, horrible hermit, Heorot he frequented, gem-bedecked palace when night-shades had fallen. Since God did oppose him, not the throne could he touch, the light-flashing jewel, love of him knew not. 'Twas a fearful affliction to the friend of the Scyldings' soul-crushing sorrow. Not seldom in private sat the king in his council. Conference held they what the braves should determine 'gainst terrors unlooked for. At the shrines of their idols often they promised gifts and offerings. Earnestly prayed they, the devil from hell would help them to lighten their people's oppression. Such practice they used then, hope of the heathen, hell they remembered. In innermost spirit, God they knew not, judge of their actions, all-wielding ruler. No praise could they give the guardian of heaven, the wielder of glory. Woe will be his who, through furious hatred his spirit shall drive to the clutch of the fire. No comfort shall look for, wax no wiser. Well for the man who, living his life days, his Lord may face and find defense in his Father's embrace. So Healfdene's kinsman constantly mused on his long-lasting sorrow. The battle-thane clever was not anywise able evils to scape from. Too crushing the sorrow that came to the people, loathsome and lasting the life-grinding torture, greatest of night woes. So Higelac's liegeman, good amid Geatmen, of Grendel's achievements heard in his home, of heroes then living. He was stoutest and strongest, sturdy and noble. He bade them prepare him a bark that was trusty. He said he the war-king would seek o'er the ocean, the folk-leader noble, since he needed retainers. For the perilous project prudent companions chided him little, though loving him dearly. They egged the brave atheling, augured him glory. The excellent knight from the folk of the Geatmen had liegemen selected, likest to prove them trustworthy warriors. With 14 companions the vessel he looked for, a liegeman then showed them, a sea-crafty man, the bounds of the country. Fast the days fleeted, the float was a water, the craft by the cliff. Clomb to the prow, then well-equipped warriors, the wave-currents twisted, the sea on the sand. Soldiers then carried on the breast of the vessel bright shining jewels, handsome war armor. Heroes outshoved then, warm in the woodship, on its wished-for adventure. The foamy-necked floater fanned by the breeze, likest a bird, glided the waters, till 24 hours thereafter. The twist-stemmed vessel had traveled such distance that the sailing men saw the sloping embankments, the sea cliffs gleaming, precipitous mountains, Nesses 10 enormous. They were nearing the limits, at the end of the ocean. Up thence quickly the men of the Weeders clomb to the mainland, fastened their vessel, battle-weeds rattled, war-burnies clattered. The wielder they thanked, that the ways o'er the waters had waxen so gentle. Then well from the cliff edge the guard of the Scyldings, who the sea-cliffs should see to, saw o'er the gangway, brave ones bearing beauteous targets, armor all ready. Anxiously thought he, musing and wondering what men were approaching. High on his horse then Hrothgar's retainer turned him to coastward, mightily brandished his lance in his hands, questioned with boldness. Who are ye men here, mail-covered warriors clad in your corslets, come thus a-driving a high-riding ship o'er the shoals of the waters, and hither, 'neath helmets have hied o'er the ocean? I have been strandguard standing as warden, lest enemies ever anywise ravage Danish dominions with army of warships. More boldly never have warriors ventured hither to come. Of kinsmen's approval, word leave of warriors, I ween, leaven, that ye surely nothing have known. Never a greater one of earls o'er the earth have I had a sight of than is one of your number, a hero in armor, no low-ranking fellow adorned with his weapons, but launching them little, unless looks are deceiving, and striking appearance. Ere ye pass on your journey as treacherous spies to the land of the Scyldings and farther fare, I fully must know now what race ye belong to. Ye far-away dwellers, seafaring sailors, my simple opinion hear ye and hearken. Haste is most fitting, plainly to tell me what place ye are come from. The chief of the strangers rendered him answer, war troopers' leader, and word treasure opened. We are sprung from the lineage of the people of Geatland, and Higelac's hearth friends. To heroes unnumbered my father was known, a noble head warrior, Ecgtheow titled. Many a winter he lived with the people ere he passed on his journey, old from his dwelling. Each of the counselors, widely mid-world folk, well remembers him. We, kindly of spirit, the lord of thy people, the son of King Helfdene, have come here to visit, folk troops defender, be free in thy counsels. To the noble one bear we a weighty commission, the helm of the Danemen. We shall hide, I ween, naught of our message. Thou know'st if it happen, as we soothly heard say, that some savage despoiler, some hidden pursuer, on nights that are murky by deeds very direful, mid the Danemen exhibits hatred unheard of, horrid destruction and the falling of dead. From feelings least selfish I am able to render counsel to Hrothgar, how he, wise and worthy, may worst the destroyer, if the anguish of sorrow should ever be lessened, comfort come to him, and care waves grow cooler, or ever hereafter he agony suffer, and troublous distress, while towereth upward the handsomest of houses high on the summit. Bestriding his stallion, the strand watchman answered, the doughty retainer, the difference surely, twixt words and works, the warlike shield-bearer who judgeth wisely well shall determine. This band, I hear, beareth no malice to the prince of the Scyldings, Pass ye then onward with weapons and armor. I shall lead you in person. To my war-trusty vassals' command I shall issue to keep from all injury your excellent vessel, your fresh-tarred craft, 'gainst every opposer close by the seashore, till the curved necked bark shall waft back again the well-beloved hero, o'er the way of the water to better dominions. To warrior so great 'twill be granted sure in the storm of strife to stand secure. Onward they fared then. The vessel lay quiet. The broad-bosomed bark was bound by its cable, firmly at anchor. The bore signs glistened bright on the visors vivid with gilding, blaze-hardened, brilliant. The bore acted warden. The heroes hastened, hurried the liegemen, descended together till they saw the great palace, the well-fashioned wassail hall wondrous and gleaming, mid-world folk and kindreds that was widest reputed of halls under heaven which the hero abode in, its luster enlightened lands without number. Then the battle-brave hero showed them the glittering court of the bold ones, that they easily thither might fare on their journey. The aforementioned warrior, turning his courser, quoth as he left them, "'Tis time I were faring. Father Almighty grant you his grace, and give you to journey safe on your mission. To the sea I will get me 'gainst hostile warriors as warden to stand." The highway glistened with many-hued pebble, a by-path led the liegemen together. Firm and hand-locked the war-byrnie glistened, the ring-sword radiant rang mid the armor as the party was approaching the palace together in warlike equipments. 'Gainst the wall of the building, their wide-fashioned war-shields they weary did set then, battle-shields sturdy, benchward they turned then, their battle-sarks 12 rattled, the gear of the heroes, the lances stood up then, all in a cluster, the arms of the seamen, ashen shafts mounted with edges of iron. The armor-clad troopers were decked with weapons. Then a proud-mooded hero asked of the champions questions of lineage. "From what borders bear ye your battle-shields plated, gilded and gleaming, your grey-colored byrnies, helmets with visors and heap of war-lances? To Hrothgar the king I am servant and liegeman. 'Mong folk from far lands found I have never men so many of me and more courageous. I ween that from valor nowise as outlaws, but from greatness of soul ye sought for King Hrothgar.' Then the strength-famous earlman answer rendered. The proud-mooded Wedder chief replied to his question, 'Hardy 'neath helmet. Higelac's mates are we, Beowulf hight I. To the bairn of Helfdene, the famous folk leader, I freely will tell to thy prince my commission. If pleasantly hearing he'll grant, we may greet him so gracious to all men.' Wulfgar replied then. He was prince of the Wendels. His boldness of spirit was known unto many, his prowess and prudence. The prince of the Scyldings, the friend lord of Danemen, I will ask of thy journey, the giver of rings, as thou urgest me do it, the folk chief famous, and inform thee early what answer the good one mindeth to render me." He turned then hurriedly where Hrothgar was sitting, old and hoary, his earlmen attending him. The strength-famous went till he stood at the shoulder of the lord of the Danemen, of courteous Thanemen, the custom he minded. Wulfgar addressed then his friendly liege lord. "Folk of the Geatmen o'er the way of the waters are wafted hither, faring from far lands, the foremost in rank, the battle champions Beowulf title. They make this petition, with thee, O my chieftain, to be granted a conference, O gracious King Hrothgar. Friendly answer refuse not to give them. In war trappings weeded 13 worthy, they seem of earls to be honored. Sure the atheling is doughty who headed the heroes hitherward coming." Hrothgar answered, helm of the Scyldings, "I remember this man as the merest of striplings. His father, long dead now, was Ecgtheow titled. Him Hrethel the Geatman granted at home his one only daughter. His battle-brave son is come but now, sought a trustworthy friend. Seafaring sailors asserted it then, who valuable gift gems of the Geatman carried as peace-offering thither, that he 30 men's grapple has in his hand, the hero in battle. The holy creator Usward sent him to West Dane warriors, I ween, for to render 'gainst Grendel's grimness gracious assistance. I shall give to the good one gift gems for courage. Hasten to bid them hither to speed them, to see assembled this circle of kinsmen. Tell them expressly their welcome in sooth to the men of the Danes." To the door of the building Wulfgar went then. This word message shouted, "My victorious liege lord bade me to tell you, the East Danes atheling, that your origin knows he, and o'er wave billows wafted ye welcome are hither, valiant of spirit. Ye straightway may enter clad in corslets, cased in your helmets, to see King Hrothgar. Here let your battle boards, wood spears and war shafts, await your conferring." The mighty one rose then, with many a liegeman, an excellent thane group. Some there did await them, and as bid of the brave one, the battle gear guarded. Together they hied them, while the hero did guide them. Neath Heorot's roof, the high-minded went then sturdy neath helmet, till he stood in the building. Beowulf spake, his byrnie did glisten, his armor seamed over by the art of the craftsman. "Hail thou, Hrothgar! I am Higelac's kinsman and vassal forsooth. Many a wonder I dared as a stripling. The doings of Grendel in far-off fatherland I fully did know of. Seafarers tell us this hall-building standeth, excellent edifice, empty and useless. To all the earlmen, after even light's glimmer, neath heaven's bright hues hath hidden its glory. This my earls then urged me, the most excellent of them, carles very clever, to come and assist thee, folk-leader Hrothgar. Fully they knew of the strength of my body. Themselves they beheld me when I came from the contest, when covered with gore foes I escaped from, where 5 I had bound, the giant race wasted, in the waters destroying the knickers 14 by night, bore numberless sorrows. The Weders avenged, woes had they suffered, enemies ravaged. Alone now with Grendel I shall manage the matter, with the monster of evil, the giant, decide it. Thee I would therefore beg of thy bounty, bright Danish chieftain, lord of the Scyldings, this single petition, not to refuse me, defender of warriors, friend lord of folks. So far have I sought thee, that I may unaided, my earlmen assisting me, this brave-mooded war-band, purify Heorot. I have heard on inquiry, the horrible creature from veriest rashness recks not for weapons. I this do scorn then, so be Higelac gracious, my liege lord beloved, lenient of spirit, to bear a blade or a broad-fashioned target, a shield to the onset. Only with hand grip the foe I must grapple, fight for my life then, foeman with foeman. He fain must rely on the doom of the Lord whom death layeth hold of. I ween he will wish, if he win in the struggle, to eat in the war hall earls of the Geat folk, boldly to swallow them, as of yore he did often, the best of the Hrethmen. Thou needest not trouble a head watch to give me. He will have me dripping and dreary with gore, if death overtake me, will bear me off bleeding, biting and mouthing me. The hermit will eat me, heedless of pity, marking the moor fens. No more wilt thou need then find me my food. If I fall in the battle, send to Higelac the armor that serveth to shield my bosom, the best of equipments, richest of ring-mails. 'Tis the relic of Hrethla, the work of Wayland, goes weird as she must go. Hrothgar discoursed, helm of the Scyldings, to defend our folk, and to furnish assistance thou soughtest us hither, good friend Beowulf. The fiercest of feuds thy father engaged in, Hethelolf killed he in hand-to-hand conflict mid Wilfingish warriors. Then the Wetterish people, for fear of a feud, were forced to disown him. Thence flying he fled to the folk of the South Danes, the race of the Scyldings, o'er the roll of the waters. I had lately begun then to govern the Danemen. The Hoard seat of heroes held in my youth, rich in its jewels. Dead was Hrothgar, my kinsman and elder had earth-joys forsaken, Helfdene his bairn. He was better than I am. That feud thereafter for a fee I compounded. O'er the weltering waters to the Wilfings I sent ornaments old. Oaths did he swear me. It pains me in spirit to any to tell it, what grief in Heorot Grendel hath caused me, what horror unlooked for by hatred unceasing. Waned is my warband, wasted my hall troop. Weird hath oft cast them to the clutches of Grendel. God can easily hinder the scather from deeds so direful. Oft drunken with beer o'er the ale-vessel promised warriors in armor, they would willingly wait on the wassailing benches, a grapple with Grendel, with grimmest of edges. Then this mead hall at morning with murder was reeking. The building was bloody at breaking of daylight. The bench deals all flooded, dripping and bloodied. The folk hall was gory. I had fewer retainers, dear beloved warriors, whom death had laid hold of. Sit at the feast now, thy intents unto heroes, thy victor fame show, as thy spirit doth urge thee. For the men of the Geats then together assembled. In the beer hall blithesome a bench was made ready. Their warlike in spirit they went to be seated, proud and exultant. A liegeman did service, who a beaker embellished bore with decorum, and gleaming drink poured. The gleeman sang whilom 15 hardy and Heorot. There was heroes rejoicing, a numerous war band of Vaders and Danemen. Unferth spoke up. Ecglaf his son, who sat at the feet of the lord of the Scyldings, opened the jousting. The journey of Beowulf, seafarer doughty, gave sorrow to Unferth, and greatest chagrin too, for granted he never, that any man else on earth should attain to gain under heaven more glory than he. Art thou that Beowulf with Breca did struggle, on the wide sea currents at swimming contended? Where to humour your pride the ocean ye tried, from vainest vaunting adventured your bodies in care of the waters, and no one was able, nor lief nor loth one, in the least to dissuade you your difficult voyage. Then ye ventured a swimming, where your arms outstretching the streams ye did cover, the mere ways 16 measured, mixing and stirring them, glided the ocean. Angry the waves were, with the weltering of winter. In the water's possession, ye toiled for a 7 night. He at swimming outdid thee, in strength excelled thee. Then early at morning on the Heathreams' shore the home currents tossed him. Sought he thenceward the home of his fathers, beloved of his liegemen, the land of the Brondings, the peace castle pleasant, where a people he wielded, had borough and jewels. The pledge that he made thee the son of Beanstan hath soothly accomplished. Then I ween thou wilt find thee less fortunate issue, though ever triumphant in onset of battle. A grim grappling, if Grendel thou darest for the space of a night near by to wait for, Beowulf answered, offspring of Ecgtheow. My good friend Unferth, sure freely and wildly, thou fuddled with beer of Breca hast spoken, hast told of his journey. A fact I allege it, that greater strength in the waters I had then, ills in the ocean, than any man else had. We made agreement as the merest of striplings promised each other, both of us then were younkers in years, that we yet would adventure out on the ocean. It all we accomplished. While swimming the sea floods, sword blade unscabbarded boldly we brandished, our bodies expected to shield from the sharks. He sure was unable to swim on the waters further than I could, more swift on the waves, nor would I from him go. Then we 2 companions stayed in the ocean, 5 nights together, till the currents did part us, the weltering waters, weather's the bleakest, and nethermost night, and the north wind whistled fierce in our faces. Fell were the billows. The mere fish's mood was mightily ruffled, and there against foemen my firm knotted corslet, hand-jointed hardy, help did afford me. My battle-sark braided, brilliantly gilded, lay on my bosom. To the bottom then dragged me, a hateful fiend-scather, seized me and held me, grim in his grapple. 'Twas granted me, nathless, to pierce the monster with the point of my weapon, my obedient blade. Battle off carried the mighty mere creature by means of my hand-blow. So ill-meaning enemies often did cause me sorrow the sorest. I served them in quittance with my dear loved sword, as in sooth it was fitting. They missed the pleasure of feasting abundantly, ill-doers evil of eating my body, of surrounding the banquet deep in the ocean. But wounded with edges early at morning, they were stretched a-high on the strand of the ocean, put to sleep with the sword that sea-going travelers no longer thereafter were hindered from sailing the foam-dashing currents. Came a light from the east, God's beautiful beacon. The billows subsided, that well I could see the nesses projecting, the blustering crags. Weird often saveth the undoomed hero if doughty his valor, but me did it fortune to fell with my weapon 9 of the knickers. Of night struggle harder neath dome of the heaven heard I but rarely, nor of white 17 more woeful in the waves of the ocean. Yet I scaped with my life the grip of the monsters, weary from travel. Then the waters bear me to the land of the Finns, the flood with the current, the weltering waves. Not a word hath been told me of deeds so daring done by thee, Unferth, and of sword terror none. Never hath Breca at the play of the battle, nor either of you 2, feats so fearless performed with weapons glinting and gleaming. I utter no boasting. Though with cold-blooded cruelty thou killedst thy brothers, thy nearest of kin. Thou needs must in hell get direful damnation, though doughty thy wisdom. I tell thee in earnest, offspring of Ecglaf, never had Grendel such numberless horrors, the direful demon done to thy liegelord, harrying in Heorot, if thy heart were as sturdy, thy mood as ferocious as thou dost describe them. He hath found out fully that the fierce burning hatred, the edge battle eager of all of your kindred, of the victory Scyldings, need little dismay him. Oaths he exacteth, not any he spares of the folk of the Danemen, but fighteth with pleasure, killeth and feasteth, no contest expecteth from spear Danish people. But the prowess and valor of the earls of the Geatmen early shall venture to give him a grapple. He shall go who is able bravely to banquet, when the bright light of morning which the second day bringeth, the sun in its ether robes, o'er children of men shines from the southward. Then the grey-haired, war-famed giver of treasure was blithesome and joyous, the bright Danish ruler expected assistance. The people's protector heard from Beowulf his bold resolution. There was a laughter of heroes. Loud was the clatter. The words were winsome. Wealhtheow advanced then, consort of Hrothgar, of courtesy mindful, gold-decked saluted the men in the building, and the free-born woman the beaker presented. To the lord of the kingdom, first of the East Danes, bade him be blithesome when beer was a-flowing. Lief to his liegeman, he lustily tasted of banquet and beaker, battle-famed ruler. The Helmingish lady then graciously circled, mid all the liegemen lesser and greater, treasure cups tendered, till time was afforded, that the decorous-mooded, diademed folk-queen might bear to Beowulf the bumper o'er-running. She greeted the Geat prince. God she did thank, most wise in her words, that her wish was accomplished, that in any of earlmen she ever should look for solace in sorrow. He accepted the beaker, battle-bold warrior, at Wealhtheow's giving. Then equipped for combat, quoth he in measures. Beowulf spake, offspring of Ecgtheow. I purposed in spirit when I mounted the ocean, when I boarded my boat with a band of my liegemen, I would work to the fullest the will of your people, or in foes' clutches fastened fall in the battle. Deeds I shall do of daring and prowess, or the last of my life days live in this Mead Hall. These words to the lady were welcome and pleasing. The boast of the Geatmen, with gold trappings broidered, went the free-born folk-queen her fond lord to sit by. Then again, as of yore was heard in the building. Courtly discussion, conquerors shouting, heroes were happy, till Healfdene's son would go to his slumber to seek for refreshing. For the horrid hell-monster in the hall building knew he. A fight was determined, since the light of the sun they no longer could see, and lowering darkness o'er all had descended, and dark under heaven shadowy shapes came shying around them. The liegemen all rose then. One saluted the other, Hrothgar Beowulf, in rhythmical measures, wishing him well, and, the wassail hall giving to his care and keeping, quoth he departing, Not to anyone else have I ever entrusted, but thee and thee only, the hall of the Danemen, since high I could heave my hand and my buckler. Take thou in charge now the noblest of houses. Be mindful of honor, exhibiting prowess. Watch 'gainst the foeman. Thou shalt want no enjoyments. Survive thou safely adventure so glorious. Then Hrothgar departed, his earl throng attending him, folk-lord of Scyldings, forth from the building. The war chieftain wished then Wealhtheow to look for, the queen for a bedmate, to keep away Grendel. The glory of Kings 18 had given a hall watch, as men heard recounted, for the king of the Danemen. He did special service, gave the giant a watcher, and the prince of the Geatmen implicitly trusted his warlike strength and the wielder's protection. His armor of iron off him he did then, his helmet from his head, to his henchman committed his chaste-handled chainsword, choicest of weapons, and bade him bide with his battle equipments. The good one then uttered words of defiance. Beowulf Geatman, ere his bed he up-mounted. I hold me no meaner in matters of prowess, in warlike achievements, than Grendel does himself. Hence I seek not with sword-edge to sooth him to slumber, of life to bereave him, though well I am able. No battle skill has he, that blows he should strike me, to shatter my shield. Though sure he is mighty in strife and destruction, but struggling by night we shall do without edges, dare he to look for weaponless warfare, and wise-mooded father the glory apportion, God ever holy, on which hand soever to him seemeth proper. Then the brave-mooded hero bent to his slumber, the pillow received the cheek of the noble, and many a martial mere-thane attending sank to his slumber. Seemed it unlikely that ever thereafter any should hope to be happy at home, hero friends visit o'er the lordly troop-castle where he lived from his childhood. They had heard how slaughter had snatched from the wine-hall, had recently ravished, of the race of the Scyldings too many by far. But the Lord to them granted the weaving of war-speed, 19 to wetterish heroes' aid and comfort, that every opponent by one man's war might they worsted and vanquished by the might of himself. The truth is established that God Almighty hath governed for ages kindreds and nations. A night very lurid, the traveller at twilight came tramping and striding. The warriors were sleeping who should watch the horned building, one only excepted. Mid-earthmen 'twas stablished, the implacable foeman was powerless to hurl them to the land of shadows, if the Lord were unwilling. But serving as warder, in terror to foemen, he angrily bided the issue of battle. 'Neath the cloudy cliffs came from the moor, then Grendel going, God's anger bare he. The monster intended some one of earthmen in the hall building grand to entrap and make way with. He went under welkin, where well he knew of the wine-joyous building, brilliant with plating, gold hall of earthmen. Not the earliest occasion he the home and manor of Hrothgar had sought. Ne'er found he in life, days later nor earlier, hardier hero, hall thanes more sturdy. Then came to the building the warrior marching, bereft of his joyance. The door quickly opened, on fire hinges fastened when his fingers had touched it. The fell one had flung then, his fury so bitter, opened the entrance. Early thereafter, the foeman trod the shining hall pavement, strode he angrily. From the eyes of him glimmered a lustre unlovely likest to fire. He beheld in the hall the heroes in numbers, a circle of kinsmen sleeping together, a throng of thanemen. Then his thoughts were exultant. He minded to sunder from each of the thanemen the life from his body, horrible demon, ere morning came, since fate had allowed him the prospect of plenty. Providence willed not to permit him any more of men under heaven to eat in the night time. Higelac's kinsman. Great sorrow endured how the dire-mooded creature in unlooked-for assaults were likely to bear him. No thought had the monster of deferring the matter, but on earliest occasion he quickly laid hold of a soldier asleep, suddenly tore him, bit his bone prison, the blood drank in currents, swallowed in mouthfuls. He soon had the dead man's feet and hands, too, eaten entirely. Nearer he strode then. The stout-hearted warrior snatched as he slumbered, seizing with hand-grip. Forward the foeman foined with his hand. Caught he quickly the cunning deviser, on his elbow he rested. This early discovered the master of malice, that in Middle-earth's regions, 'neath the whole of the heavens, no hand-grapple greater in any man else had he ever encountered. Fearful in spirit, faint-mooded waxed he, not off could betake him. Death he was pondering, would fly to his covert, seek the devil's assembly. His calling no more was the same he had followed long in his lifetime. The liege kinsman worthy of Higelac minded his speech of the evening. Stood he up straight and stoutly did seize him. His fingers crackled. The giant was outward. The earl stepped farther. The famous one minded to flee away farther if he found an occasion, and off and away, avoiding delay, to fly to the fen moors. He fully was ware of the strength of his grapple in the grip of the foeman. 'Twas an ill-taken journey that the injury-bringing, harrying harmer to Heorot wandered. The palace re-echoed. To all of the Danemen, dwellers in castles, to each of the bold ones, earlmen, was terror. Angry they both were, archwarders raging. Rattled the building. 'Twas a marvelous wonder that the wine-hall withstood then. The bold in battle, bent not to earthward, excellent earth hall, but within and without it was fastened so firmly in fetters of iron by the art of the armorer. Off from the sill there bent mead benches many, as men have informed me, adorned with gold work, where the grim ones did struggle. The Scylding wise men weened ne'er before that. By might and main strength a man under heaven might break it in pieces, bone-decked, resplendent, crush it by cunning, unless clutch of the fire and smoke should consume it. the sound mounted upward. Novel enough. On the north Danes fastened a terror of anguish, on all of the men there who heard from the wall the weeping and plaining, the song of defeat from the foeman of heaven, heard him hymns of horror howl, and his sorrow hellbound bewailing. He held him too firmly who was strongest of main strength of men of that era. For no cause whatever would the earlman's defender leave in life joys the loathsome newcomer. He deemed his existence utterly useless to men under heaven. Many a noble of Beowulf brandished his battle-sword old, would guard the life of his lord and protector, the far-famous chieftain, if able to do so. While waging the warfare, this wist they but little, brave battle-thanes, while his body intending to slit into slivers, and seeking his spirit, that the relentless foeman, nor finest of weapons of all on the earth, nor any of war-bills was willing to injure, but weapons of victory, swords and such like he had sworn to dispense with. His death at that time must prove to be wretched, and the faraway spirit widely should journey into enemies' power. This plainly he saw then who with mirth of mood malice no little had wrought in the past on the race of the earthmen. To God he was hostile, that his body would fail him, but Higelac's hardy henchmen and kinsmen held him by the hand. Hateful to other was each one if living. A body wound suffered the direful demon. Damage incurable was seen on his shoulder. His sinews were shivered. His body did burst. To Beowulf was given glory in battle. Grendel from thenceward must flee and hide him in the fencliffs and marshes. Sick unto death, his dwelling must look for unwinsome and woeful. He wist the more fully the end of his earthly existence was nearing, his life-days' limits. At last for the Danemen, when the slaughter was over, their wish was accomplished. The comer from far land had cleansed then of evil, wise and valiant, the war hall of Hrothgar, saved it from violence. He joyed in the night work, in repute for prowess, the prince of the Geatmen. For the East Danish people his boast had accomplished, bettered their burdensome bale sorrows fully. The craft begot evil they erstwhile had suffered, and were forced to endure from crushing oppression, their manifold misery. 'Twas a manifest token, when the hero in battle the hand suspended, the arm and the shoulder, there was all of the claw of Grendel together, 'neath great stretching hall roof. In the mist of the morning many a warrior stood round the gift hall, as the story is told me. Folk princes fared then from far and from near, through long stretching journeys to look at the wonder, the footprints of the foeman. Few of the warriors who gazed on the foot tracks of the inglorious creature. His parting from life pained very deeply. How, weary in spirit, off from those regions in combats conquered he carried his traces, faded and flying, to the flood of the Knickers. There in bloody billows bubbled the currents. The angry eddy was everywhere mingled and seething with gore, welling with sword blood. He death-doomed had hid him, when reaved of his joyance he laid down his life in the lair he had fled to, his heathenish spirit where hell did receive him. Thence the friends from of old backward turned them, and many a younker from merry adventure, striding their stallions, stout from the seaward, heroes on horses. There were heard very often Beowulf's praises. Many often asserted that neither south nor north in the circuit of waters, o'er outstretching earth-plain, none other was better, mid bearers of war-shields, more worthy to govern, 'neath the arch of the ether. Not any, however, 'gainst the friend lord muttered, mocking words uttered of Hrothgar the gracious, a good king he. Oft the famed ones permitted their fallow-skinned horses to run in rivalry, racing and chasing, where the fieldways appeared to them fair and inviting, known for their excellence. Oft a thane of the folklore, a man of celebrity, mindful of rhythms, who ancient traditions treasured in memory, new word groups found properly bound. The bard after gan then Beowulf's venture, wisely to tell of, and words that were clever to utter skillfully, earnestly speaking. Everything told he that he heard as to Sigmund's mighty achievements, many things hidden, the strife of the Whalesing, the wide-going ventures the children of men knew of but little, the feud and the fury, but Fitela with him, when such like matters he minded to speak of, uncle to nephew, as in every contention, each to other was ever devoted, a numerous host of the race of the Scathers, they had slain with the sword edge. To Sigmund accrued then no little of glory when his life days were over, since he sturdy in struggle had destroyed the great dragon, the hoard treasure's keeper. Neath the hoar grayish stone he, the son of the atheling, unaided adventured the perilous project. Not present was Fitela, yet the fortune befell him of forcing his weapon through the marvelous dragon, that it stood in the wall, well-honored weapon. The worm was slaughtered. The great one had gained then by his glorious achievement to reap from the ring-hoard richest enjoyment, as best it did please him. His vessel he loaded, shining ornaments on the ship's bosom carried, kinsman of Wales, the drake in heat melted. He was farthest famed of fugitive pilgrims, mid-wide scattered world folk, for works of great prowess, war troopers' shelter, hence waxed he in honor. Afterward Hermod's hero strength failed him, his vigor and valor. Mid venomous haters to the hands of foemen he was foully delivered, oft driven early. Agony billows oppressed him too long, to his people he became then, to all the athelings, an ever great burden. And the daring one's journey in days of yore, many wise men were wont to deplore, such as hoped he would bring them help in their sorrow, that the son of their ruler should rise into power, holding the headship held by his fathers, should govern the people, the gold hoard and borough, the kingdom of heroes, the realm of the Scyldings. He to all men became then far more beloved, Higelac's kinsman, to kindreds and races, to his friends much dearer. Him malice assaulted. Oft running and racing on roadsters, they measured the dun-colored highways. Then the light of the morning was hurried and hastened. Went henchmen in numbers to the beautiful building, bold ones in spirit, to look at the wonder. The liege lord himself then from his wife-bower wending, warden of treasures, glorious trod with troopers unnumbered, famed for his virtues, and with him the queen-wife measured the mead-ways, with maidens attending. Hrothgar discoursed, to the hall building went he. He stood by the pillar, saw the steep rising hall roof, gleaming with gold gems, and Grendel his hand there. For the sight we behold now, thanks to the wielder early be offered. Much evil I bided, snaring from Grendel. God can e'er accomplish wonder on wonder, wielder of glory, but lately I reckoned ne'er under heaven comfort to gain me for any of sorrows, while the handsomest of houses horrid with blood-stain gory uptowered, grief had oft frightened each of the wise ones who weened not that ever the folk troops' defences gainst foes they should strengthen, gainst sprites and monsters. Through the might of the wielder, a doughty retainer hath a deed now accomplished, which erstwhile we all with our excellent wisdom failed to perform. May affirm very truly what woman soever in all of the nations gave birth to the child, if yet she surviveth, that the long ruling lord was lavish to Hereward in the birth of the bairn. Now, Beowulf dear, most excellent hero, I'll love thee in spirit as bairn of my body. Bear well henceforward the relationship new. No lack shall befall thee of earth joys any I ever can give thee. Full often for lesser service I've given hero less hardy hoard treasure precious to a weaker in war strife. By works of distinction thou hast gained for thyself now that thy glory shall flourish forever and ever. The all-ruler quite 20 thee, with good from his hand as he hitherto did thee. Beowulf answered, Ecgtheow's offspring. That labor of glory most gladly achieved we. The combat accomplished, unquailing we ventured the enemy's grapple. I would grant it much, rather thou wert able to look at the creature in person, faint unto falling the foe in his trappings. On murder-bed quickly I minded to bind him, with firm-holding fetters, that forced by my grapple low, he should lie in life and death struggle, less his body escape. I was wholly unable, since God did not will it, to keep him from going, not held him that firmly, hated opposer. Too swift was the foeman. Yet safety regarding he suffered his hand behind him to linger, his arm and shoulder to act as watcher. No shadow of solace the woe-begone creature found him there nathless. The hated destroyer liveth no longer lashed for his evils. But sorrow hath seized him, in snare meshes hath him close in its clutches, keepeth him writhing in baleful bonds. There banished for evil, the man shall wait for the mighty tribunal, how the God of glory shall give him his earnings. Then the soldier kept silent, son of old Ecglaf, from boasting and bragging of battle achievements, since the princes beheld there the hand that depended, 'neath the lofty hall timbers by the might of the nobleman, each one before him, the enemy's fingers. Each fingernail strong steel most resembled, the heathen one's hand-spur, the hero in battle's claw most uncanny. 21, quoth they agreeing, that not any excellent edges of brave ones was willing to touch him, the terrible creature's battle hand bloody to bear away from him. Then straight was ordered that Heorot inside, with hands be embellished, a host of them gathered, of men and women, who the wassailing building the guest hall begeared. Gold flashing sparkled webs 23 on the walls then, of wonders a many to each of the heroes that look on such objects. The beautiful building was broken to pieces, which all within with irons was fastened, its hinges torn off. Only the roof was whole and uninjured when the horrible creature outlawed for evil off had betaken him, hopeless of living. 'Tis hard to avoid it, whoever will do it, but he doubtless must come to the place awaiting, as Weird hath appointed, soul-bearers, earth-dwellers, earls under heaven, where bound on its bed his body shall slumber when feasting is finished. Full was the time then that the son of Helfdene went to the building. The excellent atheling would eat of the banquet. Ne'er heard I that people with hero band larger bear them better towards their bracelet bestower. The laden with glory stooped to the bench then. Their kinsmen companions in plenty were joyful, many a cupful quaffing complacently. Doughty of spirit in the high towering palace, Hrothgar and Hrothulf. Heorot then inside was filled with friendly ones, falsehood and treachery. The folk Scyldings now nowise did practice. Then the offspring of Helfdene offered to Beowulf a golden standard, as reward for the victory, a banner embossed, byrnie and helmet. Many men saw then a song-famous weapon born for the hero. Beowulf drank of the cup in the building, that treasure bestowing, he needed not blush for in battle men's presence. Ne'er heard I that many men on the ale-bench in friendlier fashion to their fellows presented 4 bright jewels with gold work embellished. Round the roof of the helmet a head-garter outside braided with wires, with bosses was furnished, that swords for the battle fight hardened might fail boldly to harm him, when the hero proceeded forth against foemen. The defender of earls then commanded that 8 steeds with bridles gold-plated, gleaming be guided to Hallward, inside the building. On one of them stood then an art-broidered saddle embellished with jewels. 'Twas the sovereign's seat, when the son of King Helfdene was pleased to take part in the play of the edges. The famous one's valor ne'er failed at the front when slain ones were bowing. And to Beowulf granted the prince of the Ingwins power over both, o'er war steeds and weapons, bade him well to enjoy them. In so manly a manner the mighty famed chieftain, Hoard ward of heroes with horses and jewels war storms requited, that none e'er condemneth who willeth to tell truth with full justice. And the atheling of earlmen to each of the heroes who the ways of the waters went with Beowulf, a costly gift token gave on the mead bench, offered an heirloom, and ordered that that man with gold should be paid for, whom Grendel had erstwhile wickedly slaughtered, as he more of them had done had far-seeing God and the mood of the hero. The fate not averted, the Father then governed all of the earth-dwellers, as he ever is doing. Hence insight for all men is everywhere fittest, forethought of spirit. Much he shall suffer of lief and of loathsome who long in this present useth the world in this woeful existence. There was music and merriment mingling together, touching Helfdene's leader. The joy-wood was fingered, measures recited, when the singer of Hrothgar. On mead bench should mention the merry hall joyance of the kinsmen of Finn, when onset surprised them. The half-Danish hero, Hnaef of the Scyldings, on the field of the Frisians was fated to perish. Sure Hildeburh needed not mention approving the faith of the Jutemen, though blameless entirely. When shields were shivered, she was shorn of her darlings, of bairns and brothers. They bent to their fate, with war-spear wounded. Woe was that woman. Not causeless lamented the daughter of Hochi, the decree of the wielder when morning light came, and she was able, 'neath heaven to behold the destruction of brothers and bairns, where the brightest of earth joys she had hitherto had. All the henchmen of Finn war had off taken, save a handful remaining, that he nowise was able to offer resistance to the onset of Hengist in the parley of battle, nor the wretched remnant to rescue in war from the Earl of the Atheling. But they offered conditions: another great building to fully make ready, a hall and a high seat, that half they might rule with the sons of the Jutemen, and that Folkwalda's son would day after day the Danemen honor when gifts were giving, and grant of his ring store to Hengist's earl troop ever so freely, of his gold-plated jewels, as he encouraged the Frisians on the bench of the beer hall. On both sides they swore then a fast binding compact, Finn unto Hengist, with no thought of revoking, vowed then most solemnly, the woe-begone remnant well to take charge of, his wit unadvising. The agreement should no one by words or works weaken and shatter, by artifice ever injure its value, though reaved of their ruler, their ring-giver's slayer, they followed as vassals, fate so requiring. Then, if one of the Frisians the quarrel should speak of in tones that were taunting, terrible edges should cut in requital. Accomplished the oath was, and treasure of gold from the hoard was uplifted. The best of the Scylding braves was then fully prepared for the pile. At the pyre was seen clearly the blood-gory Birnie, the boar with his gilding, the iron-hard swine, athelings many fatally wounded. No few had been slaughtered. Hildeburh bade then, at the burning of Hnaef, the bairn of her bosom to bear to the fire, that his body be burned and borne to the pyre. The woe-stricken woman wept on his shoulder, in measures lamented, up-mounted the hero. The greatest of dead fires curled to the welkin. On the hill's front crackled. Heads were a-melting, wound doors bursting, while the blood was a-coursing from body-bite fierce. The fire devoured them, greediest of spirits, whom war had oft carried from both of the peoples. Their bravest were fallen. Then the warriors departed to go to their dwellings, reaved of their friends, Friesland to visit, their homes and high city. Hengist continued, biding with Finn the blood-tainted winter, wholly unsundered. Of fatherland thought he, though unable to drive the ring-stemmed vessel o'er the ways of the waters. The wave-deeps were tossing, fought with the wind. Winter in ice bonds closed up the currents, till there came to the dwelling a year in its course, as yet it revolveth, if season propitious one alway regardeth, world-cheering weathers. Then winter was gone, earth's bosom was lovely, the exile would get him, the guest from the palace. On gruesomest vengeance he brooded more eager than on oversea journeys, where onset of anger he were able to accomplish, the bairns of the Jutemen therein to remember. Nowise refused he the duties of liegeman, when Hun of the Frisians the battle-sword laughing, fairest of falchions, friendly did give him. Its edges were famous in folk-talk of Jutland, and savage sword fury seized in its clutches bold-mooded Finn where he bode in his palace. When the gruesome grapple Guthlaf and Oslaf had mournfully mentioned, the mere journey over, for sorrows half blamed him, the flickering spirit could not bide in his bosom. Then the building was covered with corpses of foemen, and Finn too was slaughtered, the king with his comrades, and the queen made a prisoner. The troops of the Scyldings bore to their vessels all that the land king had in his palace. Such trinkets and treasures they took as, on searching, at Finn's they could find. They ferried to Daneland. The excellent woman on oversea journey led her to their landfolk. The lay was concluded, the gleeman's recital. Shouts again rose then, bench glee resounded, bearers then offered wine from wonder vats. Wealhtheow advanced then going neath gold crown, where the good ones were seated uncle and nephew. Their peace was yet mutual, true each to the other. And Unferth the spokesman sat at the feet of the lord of the Scyldings. Each trusted his spirit that his mood was courageous, though at fight he had failed in faith to his kinsman. Said the queen of the Scyldings, "My lord and protector treasure-bestower, take thou this beaker. Joyance attend thee, gold friend of heroes, and greet thou the Geatmen with gracious responses. So ought one to do. Be kind to the Geatmen, in gifts not niggardly, anear and afar now, peace thou enjoyest. Report hath informed me thou'lt have for a bairn the battle-brave hero. Now is Heorot cleansed, ring-palace gleaming. Give while thou mayest many rewards, and bequeath to thy kinsman kingdom and people, on wending thy way to the wielder's splendor. I know good Hrothulf, that the noble young troopers he'll care for and honor Lord of the Scyldings, if earth joys thou endest earlier than he doth. I reckon that recompense he'll render with kindness our offspring and issue, if that all he remember. What favors of yore, when he yet was an infant, we awarded to him for his worship and pleasure. Then she turned by the bench where her sons were carousing, Hrethric and Hrothmund, and the hero's offspring, the war youth together. There the good one was sitting, twixt the brothers twain, Beowulf Geatman. A beaker was borne him, and bidding to quaff it graciously given, and gold that was twisted pleasantly proffered, a pair of arm jewels, rings and corslet, of collars the greatest I've heard of neath heaven. Of heroes not any more splendid from jewels have I heard, neath the welkin, since Hama off bore the Brosingmen's necklace, the Bracteates 24 in jewels, from the bright shining city, Jormunric's cunning craftiness fled from, chose gain everlasting. Geatish Higelac, grandson of Swerting, last had this jewel. When tramping neath banner the treasure he guarded, the field spoil defended, fate oft carried him when for deeds of daring he endured tribulation, hate from the Frisians. The ornaments bare he o'er the cup of the currents, costly gem treasures, mighty folk leader, he fell neath his target. The corpse of the king then came into charge of the race of the Frankmen, the mail shirt and collar. Warmen less noble plundered the fallen. When the fight was finished, the folk of the Geatmen, the field of the dead, held in possession. The choicest of Mead halls with cheering resounded. Wealhtheow discoursed, the war troop addressed she. This collar enjoy thou, Beowulf, worthy young man, in safety, and use thou this armor, gems of the people, and prosper thou fully. Show thyself sturdy, and be to these liegemen mild with instruction. I'll mind thy requital. Thou hast brought it to pass that far and near forever and ever earthmen shall honor thee, even so widely as ocean surroundeth the blustering bluffs. Be, while thou livest, a wealth-blessed atheling. I wish thee most truly jewels and treasure. Be kind to my son, thou living in joyance. Here each of the nobles is true unto other, gentle in spirit, loyal to leader. The liegemen are peaceful, the war troops ready, well-drunken heroes. Do as I bid ye. Then she went to the settle. There was choicest of banquets. Wine drank the heroes. Weird they knew not, destiny cruel, as to many an earlman early it happened, when evening had come, and Hrothgar had parted off to his manor, the mighty to slumber. Warriors unnumbered warded the building, as erst they did often. The ale settle bared they. 'Twas covered all over with beds and pillows. Doomed unto death, down to his slumber, bowed then a beer thane. Their battle shields placed they, bright shining targets, up by their heads then. O'er the atheling on ale bench 'twas easy to see their battle-high helmet, byrnie of ring-mail, and mighty war-spear. 'Twas the wont of that people to constantly keep them equipped for the battle, at home or marching, in either condition, at seasons just such as necessity ordered, as best for their ruler, that people was worthy. They sank then to slumber. With sorrow one paid for his evening repose, as often betid them, while Grendel was holding the gold-bedecked palace, ill deeds performing, till his end overtook him, death for his sins. 'Twas seen very clearly, known unto earth-folk, that still an avenger outlived the loathed one, long since the sorrow caused by the struggle. The mother of Grendel, devil-shaped woman, her woe ever minded, who was held to inhabit the horrible waters, the cold flowing currents, after Cain had become a slayer with edges to his one only brother, the son of his sire. He set out, then banished, marked as a murderer, man-joys avoiding, lived in the desert. Thence demons unnumbered, fate sent awoke, one of them Grendel, sword-cursed, hateful, who at Heorot met with a man that was watching, waiting the struggle, where a horrid one held him with hand-grapples sturdy. Nathless he minded the might of his body, the glorious gift God had allowed him, and folk-ruling father's favor relied on, his help and his comfort. So he conquered the foeman, the hell-spirit humbled, he unhappy departed then, reaved of his joyance, journeying to death haunts, foeman of man. His mother, moreover, eager and gloomy, was anxious to go on her mournful mission, mindful of vengeance for the death of her son. She came then to Heorot, where the armored Dane earlmen all through the building were lying in slumber. Soon there became then return to the nobles, when the mother of Grendel entered the folk hall. The fear was less grievous, by even so much as the vigor of maidens, war strength of women by warrior is reckoned, when well-carved weapon, worked with the hammer, blade very bloody, brave with its edges, strikes down the boar sign that stands on the helmet. Then the hard-edged weapon was heaved in the building. The brand 25 o'er the benches, broad lindens many handfast were lifted. For helmet he recked not, for armor net broad, whom terror laid hold of. She went then, hastily, outward would get her life for to save, when someone did spy her. Soon she had grappled one of the athelings fast and firmly, when fenward she hied her. That one to Hrothgar was liefest of heroes in rank of retainer where waters encircle, a mighty shield warrior, whom she murdered at slumber, a broadly famed battle knight. Beowulf was absent, but another apartment was erstwhile devoted to the glory-decked Geatman when gold was distributed. There was hubbub in Heorot. The hand that was famous she grasped in its gore. Grief was renewed then in homes and houses. 'Twas no happy arrangement in both of the quarters to barter and purchase with lives of their friends. Then the well-adjed ruler, the grey-headed war-thane, was woeful in spirit, when his long-trusted liegeman lifeless he knew of, his dearest one gone. Quick from a room was Beowulf brought, brave and triumphant. As day was dawning in the dusk of the morning, went then that earlman, champion noble, came with comrades, where the clever one bided, whether God all-gracious would grant him a respite after the woe he had suffered. The war-worthy hero with a troop of retainers trod then the pavement, the hall-building groaned, till he greeted the wise one, the Earl of the Ingwins, asked if the night had fully refreshed him, as fain he would have it. Hrothgar rejoined, helm of the Scyldings, "Ask not of joyance. Grief is renewed to the folk of the Danemen. Dead is Aeshere, Irminlaf's brother, older than he, my true-hearted counselor, trusty adviser, shoulder companion, when fighting in battle our heads we protected, when troopers were clashing and heroes were dashing. Such an earl should be ever an erstworthy atheling, as Aesir proved him. The flickering death spirit became in Heorot his hand-to-hand murderer. I cannot tell whither the cruel one turned in the carcass exulting, by cramming discovered. The quarrel she wreaked then, that last night Igone Grendel thou killedst in gruesomest manner, with grim holding clutches, since too long he had lessened my liege troop, and wasted my folkmen so foully. He fell in the battle with forfeit of life, and another has followed, a mighty crime worker, her kinsman avenging, and henceforth hath stablished her hatred unyielding, as it well may appear to many a liegeman, who mourneth in spirit the treasure bestower, her heavy heart sorrow. The hand is now lifeless, which availed you in every wish that you cherished. Land people heard I, liegemen, this saying, dwellers in halls. They had seen very often a pair of such mighty march-striding creatures, far-dwelling spirits holding the moorlands. One of them wore, as well they might notice, the image of woman, the other one wretched in guise of a man wandered in exile, except he was huger than any of earthmen. Earth-dwelling people entitled him Grendel in days of yore. They know not their father, where ill-going spirits any were born him ever before. They guard the wolf coverts, lands inaccessible, wind-beaten nesses, fearfullest fen-deeps, where a flood from the mountains, neath mists of the nesses netherward rattles, the stream under earth. Not far is it henceward measured by mile lengths that the mere water standeth, which forests hang over, with frost-whiting covered, a firm-rooted forest, the floods overshadow. There, ever at night, one an ill-meaning portent of fire-flood may see. 'Mong children of men none liveth so wise that wot of the bottom, though harassed by hounds the heath-stepper seek for, fly to the forest, firm-antlered he deer, spurred from afar, his spirit he yieldeth, his life on the shore, erein he will venture to cover his head. Uncanny the place is. Thence upward ascendeth the surging of waters, wan to the welkin when the wind is stirring, the weather's unpleasing, till the air groweth gloomy, and the heavens lower. Now is help to be gotten from thee and thee only. The abode thou know'st not, the dangerous place where thou art able to meet with the sin-laden hero, seek if thou darest. For the feud I will fully fee thee with money, with old-time treasure, as erstwhile I did thee, with well-twisted jewels, if away thou shalt get thee. Beowulf answered, Ecgtheow's son, grieve not, O wise one, for each it is better, his friend to avenge than with vehemence wail him. Each of us must the end day abide of his earthly existence, who is able accomplish glory ere death. To battle thane noble lifeless lying, 'tis at last most fitting. Arise, O king, quick let us hasten to look at the footprint of the kinsman of Grendel. I promise thee this now, to his place he'll escape not, to embrace of the earth, nor to mountainous forest, nor to depths of the ocean, wherever he wanders. Practice thou now patient endurance of each of thy sorrows, as I hope for thee soothly. Then up sprang the old one, the all-wielder thanked he, ruler almighty, that the man had outspoken. Then for Hrothgar a war-horse was decked with a bridle, curly-maned courser. The clever folk-leader stately proceeded. Stepped then an earl troop of linden-wood bearers. Her footprints were seen then widely in wood paths, her way o'er the bottoms, where she far away fared o'er fen country murky, bore away breathless the best of retainers, who pondered with Hrothgar the welfare of country. The son of the Athelings then went o'er the stony, declivitous cliffs, the close-covered passes, narrow passages, paths unfrequented, nesses abrupt, nicker haunts many. One of a few of wise-mooded heroes, he onward advanced to view the surroundings, till he found unawares woods of the mountain o'er hoar-stones hanging, holt wood unjoyful. The water stood under, welling and gory. 'Twas irksome in spirit to all of the Danemen, friends of the Scyldings, to many a liegeman sad to be suffered, a sorrow unlittle to each of the earlmen. When to Aesir's head they came on the cliff, the current was seething with blood and with gore. The troopers gazed on it. The horn anon sang the battle-song ready. The troop were all seated. They saw, long the water, then many a serpent, mere dragons wondrous trying the waters, nickers a-lying on the cliffs of the nesses, which at noonday full often go on the sea deeps their sorrowful journey, wild beasts and worm-kind. Away then they hastened. Hot-mooded, hateful, they heard the great clamor, the war-trumpet winding. One did the Geat prince sunder from earth-joys with arrow from bowstring. From his sea-struggle tore him, that the trusty war-missile pierced to his vitals. He proved in the currents less doughty at swimming whom death had off-carried. Soon in the waters the wonderful swimmer was straitened most sorely with sword-pointed boar-spears, pressed in the battle and pulled to the cliff edge. The liegeman then looked on the loath-fashioned stranger. Beowulf donned then his battle equipments, cared little for life, inlaid and most ample. The hand-woven corslet which could cover his body must the wave deeps explore, that war might be powerless to harm the great hero, and the hating one's grasp might not peril his safety. His head was protected by the light-flashing helmet that should mix with the bottoms, trying the eddies, treasure emblazoned, encircled with jewels. As in seasons long past the weaponsmith worked it, wondrously made it, with swine bodies fashioned it, that thenceforward no longer brand might bite it, and battle-sword hurt it. And that was not least of helpers in prowess that Hrothgar's spokesman had lent him when straitened. And the hilted handsword was Hrunting entitled, old and most excellent mong all of the treasures. Its blade was of iron, blotted with poison, hardened with gore. It failed not in battle any hero under heaven in hand who it brandished, who ventured to take the terrible journeys the battlefield sought. Not the earliest occasion. That deeds of daring 'twas destined to accomplish. Ecglaf's kinsman minded not soothly, exulting in strength, what erst he had spoken drunken with wine, when the weapon he lent to a sword hero bolder. Himself did not venture neath the strife of the currents his life to endanger, to fame deeds perform. There he forfeited glory, repute for his strength. Not so with the other, when he clad in his corslet had equipped him for battle. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son. Recall now, O famous kinsman of Helfdene, prince very prudent. Now to part I am ready, gold friend of earlmen. What erst we agreed on, should I lay down my life in lending thee assistance, when my earth joys were over, thou wouldst evermore serve me instead of a father, my faithful thaneman, my trusty retainers, protect thou and care for, fall I in battle. And Hrothgar beloved, send unto Higelac the high-valued jewels thou to me hast allotted. The lord of the Geatmen may perceive from the gold, the Rethling may see it. When he looks on the jewels, that a gem-giver found I good over measure, enjoyed him while able, and the ancient heirloom Unferth permit thou, the famed one to have, the heavy sword splendid, the hard-edged weapon, with Hrunting to aid me, I shall gain me glory, or grim death shall take me. The atheling of Geatmen uttered these words, and heroic did hasten. Not any rejoinder was willing to wait for. The wave-current swallowed the doughty in battle. Then a day's length elapsed ere he was able to see the sea at its bottom. Early she found then who 50 of winters. The course of the currents kept in her fury, grisly and greedy, that the grim one's dominion some one of men from above was exploring. Forth did she grab them, grappled the warrior with horrible clutches. Yet no sooner she injured his body unscathed, the byrnie outguarded, that she proved but powerless to pierce through the armor, the limb-mail locked, with loath-grabbing fingers. The sea-wolf bare then, when bottomward came she, the ring-prince homeward, that he after was powerless. He had daring to do it, to deal with his weapons, but many a mere beast tormented him swimming. Flood-beasts no few, with fierce biting tusks, did break through his byrnie. The brave one pursued they. The earl then discovered he was down in some cavern, where no water whatever anywise harmed him, and the clutch of the current could come not anear him, since the roofed hall prevented. Brightness a gleaming firelight he saw, flashing resplendent. The good one saw then the sea-bottom's monster, the mighty mere woman. He made a great onset with weapon of battle, his hand not desisted from striking. That war-blade struck on her head then a battle-song greedy. The stranger perceived then the sword would not bite, her life would not injure, but the falchion failed the folk-prince when straitened. Erst had it often onsets encountered, oft cloven the helmet, the fated one's armor. 'Twas the first time that ever the excellent jewel had failed of its fame. Firm-mooded after, not heedless of valor, but mindful of glory, was Higelac's kinsman. The hero chief angry cast then his carved sword covered with jewels, that it lay on the earth, hard and steel-pointed. He hoped in his strength his hand grapple sturdy. So any must act whenever he thinketh, to gain him in battle glory unending, and is reckless of living. The lord of the war Geats, he shrank not from battle, seized by the shoulder the mother of Grendel. Then mighty in struggle swung he his enemy, since his anger was kindled, that she fell to the floor. With furious grapple she gave him requital early thereafter, and stretched out to grab him. The strongest of warriors, faint-mooded, stumbled, till he fell in his traces, foot-going champion. Then she sat on the hall guest and wielded her war-knife wide-bladed, flashing, for her son would take vengeance, her one only bairn. His breast-armor woven bowed on his shoulder. It guarded his life, the entrance defended 'gainst sword-point and edges. Ecgtheow's son there had fatally journeyed, champion of Geatmen, in the arms of the ocean, had the armor not given, close woven corslet, comfort and succor, and had God most holy not awarded the victory, all-knowing Lord. Easily did heaven's ruler most righteous arrange it with justice. Uprose he erect, ready for battle. Then he saw amid the war gems a weapon of victory, an ancient giant's sword, of edges a doughty, glory of warriors, of weapons 'twas choicest, only 'twas larger than any man else was able to bear to the battle encounter, the good and splendid work of the giants. He grasped then the sword hilt, knight of the Scyldings, bold and battle-grim, brandished his ring-sword, hopeless of living, hotly he smote her. That the fiend woman's neck firmly it grappled, broke through her bone joints, the bill fully pierced her fate-cursed body. She fell to the ground then. The hand-sword was bloody, the hero exulted. The brand was brilliant. Brightly it glimmered, just as from heaven gem-like shineth the torch of the firmament. He glanced long the building, and turned by the wall then. Higelac's vassal, raging and wrathful, raised his battle-sword strong by the handle. The edge was not useless to the hero in battle, but he speedily wished to give Grendel requital for the many assaults he had worked on the West Danes not once but often. When he slew in slumber the subjects of Hrothgar, swallowed down 15 sleeping retainers of the folk of the Danemen, and fully as many carried away, a horrible prey. He gave him requital, grim, raging champion, when he saw on his rest place weary of conflict, Grendel lying, of life joys bereaved, as the battle at Heorot erstwhile had scathed him, his body far bounded, a blow when he suffered, death having seized him, sword smiting heavy, and he cut off his head then. Early this noticed, the clever carles who as comrades of Hrothgar gazed on the sea deeps, that the surging wave currents were mightily mingled, the mere flood was gory. Of the good one, the grey-haired together held converse, the hoary of head that they hoped not to see again, the atheling ever, that exulting in victory he'd return there to visit the distinguished folk-ruler. Then many concluded the mere wolf had killed him. The 9th hour came then. From the Ness edge departed the bold-mooded Scyldings. The gold friend of heroes homeward betook him. The strangers sat down then soul-sick, sorrowful, the sea-waves regarding. They wished and yet weened not their well-loved friend lord to see any more. The sword-blade began then, the blood having touched it, contracting and shriveling with battle icicles. 'Twas a wonderful marvel that it melted entirely, like as to ice when the Father unbindeth the bond of the frost, and unwindeth the wave-bands, he who wieldeth dominion of times and of tides, a truth-firm creator. Nor took he of jewels more in the dwelling, lord of the wedders, though they lay all around him, than the head and the handle handsome with jewels. The brand early melted, burnt was the weapon, so hot was the blood, the strange spirit poisonous, that in it did perish. He early swam off then, who had bided in combat the carnage of haters, went up through the ocean. The eddies were cleansed, the spacious expanses, when the spirit from Farland, his life put aside and this short-lived existence. The seaman's defender came swimming to land then doughty of spirit, rejoiced in his sea-gift, the bulky burden which he bore in his keeping. The excellent vassals advanced then to meet him. To God they were grateful, were glad in their chieftain, that to see him safe and sound was granted them. From the high-minded hero then, helmet and byrnie were speedily loosened. The ocean was putrid, the water neath, welkin weltered with gore. Forth did they fare then, their footsteps retracing, merry and mirthful, measured the earth-way, the highway familiar, men very daring, bare then the head from the sea-cliff, burdening each of the earlmen, excellent valiant. 4 of them had to carry with labor the head of Grendel to the high towering gold hall, upstuck on the spear, till 14 most valiant and battle-brave Geatmen came there going, straight to the palace. The prince of the people measured the Mead-ways, their mood-brave companion. The atheling of earlmen entered the building, deed-valiant man, adorned with distinction, doughty shield warrior, to address King Hrothgar. Then hung by the hair, the head of Grendel, was borne to the building where beer-thanes were drinking, loth before earlmen and eke for the lady. The warriors beheld then a wonderful sight. Beowulf spake, offspring of Ecgtheow. Lo, we blithely have brought thee, bairn of Helfdene, prince of the Scyldings, these presents from ocean which thine eye looketh on, for an emblem of glory. I came off alive from this, narrowly scaping. In war neath the water the work with great pains I performed, and the fight had been finished quite nearly, had God not defended me. I failed in the battle ought to accomplish, aided by Hrunting, though that weapon was worthy, but the wielder of earth-folk gave me willingly to see on the wall a heavy old hand-sword hanging in splendor. He guided most often the lorn and the friendless, that I swung as a weapon. The wards of the house then I killed in the conflict, when occasion was given me. Then the battle-sword burned, the brand that was lifted, as the blood-current sprang, hottest of war-sweats. Seizing the hilt, from my foes I off-bore it. I avenged as I ought to their acts of malignity, the murder of Danemen. I then make thee this promise. Thou'lt be able in Heorot careless to slumber with thy throng of heroes and the thanes of thy people every and each, of greater and lesser, and thou needest not fear for them from the self-same direction, as thou formerly fearedest, O folk-lord of Scyldings, end day for earlmen. To the age-hoary man then, the grey-haired chieftain, the gold-fashioned sword-hilt, old work of giants, was thereupon given. Since the fall of the fiends, it fell to the keeping of the wielder of Danemen, the wondersmith's labor, and the bad-mooded being abandoned this world then, opponent of God, victim of murder, and also his mother. It went to the keeping of the best of the world kings, where waters encircle, who the Scot divided in Scylding dominion. Hrothgar discoursed, the hilt he regarded, the ancient heirloom where an old-time contention's beginning was graven, the gurgling currents, the flood slew thereafter the race of the giants, they had proved themselves daring, that people was loth to the Lord everlasting, through lash of the billows the Father gave them final requital. So in letters of rune on the clasp of the handle gleaming in golden, 'twas graven exactly set forth and said, whom that sword had been made for, finest of irons, who first it was wrought for, wreathed at its handle and gleaming with serpents. The wise one then said, silent they all were, son of old Helfdene. He may say unrefuted who performs, mid the folk-men fairness and truth, the hoary old ruler remembers the past, that better by birth is this bairn of the nobles. Thy fame is extended through far-away countries, good friend Beowulf, o'er all of the races, thou holdest all firmly, hero-like strength with prudence of spirit. I'll prove myself grateful, as before we agreed on, thou granted for long shalt become a great comfort to kinsmen and comrades, a help unto heroes. Hermod became not such to the Scyldings, successors of Ecgwella. He grew not to please them, but grievous destruction, and diresome death woes to Danemen attracted. He slew in anger his table companions, trustworthy counselors, till he turned off lonely from world joys away, wide famous ruler. Though high ruling heaven in hero strength raised him, in might exalted him, o'er men of all nations made him supreme, yet a murderous spirit grew in his bosom. He gave then no ring gems to the Danes after custom, endured he unjoyful standing the straits from strife that was raging, longsome folk sorrow. Learn then from this, lay hold of virtue. Though laden with winters, I have sung thee these measures. 'Tis a marvel to tell it, how all-ruling God from greatness of spirit giveth wisdom to children of men. Manor and earlship, all things he ruleth. He often permitteth the mood thought of man of the illustrious lineage to lean to possessions, allows him earthly delights at his manor, a high burg of heroes to hold in his keeping, maketh portions of earth-folk hear him, and a wide-reaching kingdom so that, wisdom failing him, he himself is unable to reckon its boundaries. He liveth in luxury, little debars him, nor sickness nor age, no treachery sorrow becloudeth his spirit, conflict nowhere, no sword-hate appeareth, but all of the world doth wend as he wisheth. The worse he knoweth not, till errant arrogance inward pervading, waxeth and springeth when the warder is sleeping. The guard of the soul, with sorrows encompassed, too sound is his slumber. The slayer is near him, who with bow and arrow aimeth in malice. Then, bruised in his bosom, he with bitter-toothed missile is hurt neath his helmet. From harmful pollution he is powerless to shield him by the wonderful mandates of the loath cursed spirit. What too long he hath holden him seemeth too small, savage he hoardeth, nor boastfully giveth gold-plated rings. The fate of the future flouts and forgetteth, since God had erst given him greatness no little, wielder of glory. His end day anear, it afterward happens that the bodily dwelling fleetingly fadeth, falls into ruins. Another lays hold who doleth the ornaments, the nobleman's jewels, nothing lamenting, heedeth no terror. O Beowulf dear, best of the heroes, from bale strife defend thee, and choose thee the better, counsels eternal. Beware of arrogance, world-famous champion, but a little while lasts thy life vigor's fullness. 'Twill after hap early, that illness or sword edge shall part thee from strength, or the grasp of the fire, or the wave of the current, or clutch of the edges, or flight of the war-spear, or age with its horrors, or thine eyes bright flashing shall fade into darkness. 'Twill happen full early, excellent hero, that death shall subdue thee. So the Danes a half-century I held under heaven, helped them in struggles gainst many a race in Middle Earth's regions, with ashwood and edges, that enemies none on earth molested me. Lo, offsetting change now, came to my manor, grief after joyance, when Grendel became my constant visitor, inveterate hater. I, from that malice, continually travailed with trouble no little. Thanks be to God that I gained in my lifetime, to the Lord everlasting, to look on the gory head with mine eyes, after long-lasting sorrow. Go to the bench now, battle adorned joy in the feasting. Of jewels in common will meet with many when morning appeareth. The Geatman was gladsome, ganged he immediately to go to the bench as the clever one bade him. Then again as before were the famous for prowess, hall inhabiters, handsomely banqueted, feasted anew. The night veil fell. Then dark o'er the warriors. The courtiers rose then. The grey-haired was anxious to go to his slumbers, the hoary old Scylding. Hankered the Geatman, the champion doughty, greatly to rest him. An earlman early outward did lead him, fagged from his faring, from far country springing, who for etiquette's sake all of a liegeman's needs regarded, such as seamen at that time were bounden to feel. The big-hearted rested, the building uptowered, spacious and gilded. The guest within slumbered, till the sable-clad raven blithely foreboded the beacon of heaven. Then the bright shining sun o'er the bottoms came going. The warriors hastened, the heads of the peoples were ready to go again to their peoples. The high-mooded farer would far away thenceward look for his vessel. The valiant one bade then, offspring of Ecglaf, off to bear Hrunting, to take his weapon, his well-beloved iron. He him thanked for the gift, saying good he accounted the war-friend and mighty, nor chid he with words then the blade of the brand. 'Twas a brave-mooded hero. When the warriors were ready, arrayed in their trappings, the atheling dear to the Danemen advanced then on to the dais, where the other was sitting. Grim-mooded hero greeted King Hrothgar. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's offspring. We men of the water wish to declare now fared from far lands, were firmly determined to seek King Higelac. Here have we fitly been welcomed and feasted, as heart would desire it. Good was the greeting. If greater affection I am anywise able ever on earth to gain at thy hands, ruler of heroes, then yet I have done. I shall quickly be ready for combat and conflict. O'er the course of the waters learn I that neighbors alarm thee with terror, as haters did whilom. I hither will bring thee for help unto heroes, henchmen by thousands. I know as to Higelac, the lord of the Geatmen. Though young in years, he yet will permit me, by words and by works, ward of the people, fully to furnish thee forces and bear thee my lance to relieve thee, if liegemen shall fail thee, and help of my hand strength. If Hrethric be treating, bairn of the king at the court of the Geatmen, he thereat may find him friends in abundance. Far away countries he were better to seek for who trusts in himself. Hrothgar discoursed then, making rejoinder, These words thou hast uttered all-knowing God hath given thy spirit. Ne'er heard I an earlman thus early in life more clever in speaking. Thou'rt cautious of spirit, mighty of muscle, in mouth answers prudent. I count on the hope that, happen it ever, that missile shall rob thee of Hrethel's descendant, edge-horrid battle and illness or weapon deprive thee of prince, of people's protector, and life thou yet holdest. The sea Geats will never find a more fitting folklord to choose them, gem ward of heroes, than thou mightest prove thee, if the kingdom of kinsmen thou carest to govern. Thy mood spirit likes me the longer the better, Beowulf dear. Thou hast brought it to pass that to both these peoples peace shall be common. To Geat folk and Danemen the strife be suspended, the secret assailings they suffered in your days, and also that jewels be shared while I govern the wide-stretching kingdom, and that many shall visit others o'er the ocean with excellent gift gems. The ring-adorned bark shall bring o'er the currents presents and love-gifts. This people I know towered foeman and friend firmly established, after ancient etiquette everywise blameless. Then the warden of earlmen gave him still farther, kinsman of Helfdene, a dozen of jewels, bade him safely seek with the presents his well-beloved people, early returning. Then the noble-born king kissed the distinguished, dear-loved liegeman. The Dane prince saluted him and clasped his neck. Tears from him fell, from the grey-headed man. He two things expected, aged and reverend, but rather the second, that bold in council they'd meet thereafter. The man was so dear that he failed to suppress the emotions that moved him, but in mood fetters fastened, the long famous hero longeth in secret, deep in his spirit for the dear-beloved man, though not a blood kinsman. Beowulf thenceward, gold-splendid warrior, walked o'er the meadows exulting in treasure. The sea-going vessel riding at anchor awaited its owner. As they pressed on their way then, the present of Hrothgar was frequently referred to, a folk king indeed that every way blameless, till age did debar him the joys of his might, which hath many oft injured. Then the band of very valiant retainers came to the current. They were clad all in armor, in link-woven burnies. The landwarder noticed the return of the earlmen as he erstwhile had seen them. Nowise with insult he greeted the strangers from the nays 27 of the cliff, but rode on to meet them. Said the bright-armored visitors vessel-ward travelled welcome to waders. The wide-bosomed craft then lay on the sand, laden with armor, with horses and jewels, the ring-stemmed sailor, the mast up-towered o'er the treasure of Hrothgar. To the boat-ward a gold-bound brand he presented, that he was afterwards honoured on the ale-bench more highly as the heirloom's owner. Set he out on his vessel, to drive on the deep, Dane-country left he. Along by the mast then a sea-garment fluttered, a rope-fastened sail. The sea-boat resounded, the wind o'er the waters, the wave-floater nowise kept from its journey. The sea-goer travelled, the foamy-necked floated forth o'er the currents, the well-fashioned vessel o'er the ways of the ocean, till they came within sight of the cliffs of the Geatmen, the well-known headlands. The wave-goer hastened, driven by breezes, stood on the shore. Prompt at the ocean, the port-ward was ready, who long in the past outlooked in the distance, at water's edge, waiting well-loved heroes. He bound to the bank, then the broad-bosomed vessel, fast in its fetters, lest the force of the waters should be able to injure the ocean-wood winsome. Bade he up then take the treasure of princes, plate gold and fretwork. Not far was it thence to go off in search of the giver of jewels. Hrethel's son, Higelac, at home there remaineth, himself with his comrades close to the sea-coast. The building was splendid, the king heroic, great in his hall. Hygd very young was, fine-mooded, clever, though few were the winters that the daughter of Heorot had dwelt in the borough, but she nowise was cringing, nor niggard of presents, of ornaments rare to the race of the Geatmen. Thrytho nursed anger, excellent folk-queen, hot-burning hatred, no hero whatever, 'mong household companions, her husband excepted dared to adventure to look at the woman with eyes in the daytime, but he knew that death chains hand-wreathed were wrought him. Early thereafter, when the hand-strife was over, edges were ready. That fierce raging sword-point had to force a decision, murder-bale show. Such no womanly custom for a lady to practice, though lovely her person, that a weaver of peace, on pretence of anger, a beloved liegeman of life should deprive. Soothly this hindered Hemming's kinsman. Other ale-drinking earlmen asserted that fearful folk sorrows fewer she wrought them. Treacherous doings, since first she was given adorned with gold to the war hero youthful, for her origin honoured, when Offa's great palace o'er the fallow flood by her father's instructions, she sought on her journey, where she afterwards fully famed for her virtue, her fate on the king's seat. Enjoyed in her lifetime, love did she hold with the ruler of heroes, the best, it is told me, of all of the earthmen that oceans encompass, of earl kindreds endless. Hence Offa was famous far and widely, by gifts and by battles, spear-valiant hero. The home of his fathers he governed with wisdom, whence Eomer did issue for help unto heroes, Hemming's kinsman, grandson of Garmond, great in encounters. Then the brave one departed, his band along with him, seeking the seashore, the sea marches treading, the wide-stretching shores. The world-candle glimmered, the sun from the southward. They proceeded then onward, early arriving where they heard that the troop-lord, Ongentheow's slayer, excellent youthful folk prince and warrior, was distributing jewels close in his castle. The coming of Beowulf was announced in a message quickly to Higelac, that the folk troops' defender forth to the palace, the linden companion alive was advancing, secure from the combat courtward a-going. The building was early inward made ready for the foot-going guests as the good one had ordered. He sat by the man then who had lived through the struggle, kinsman by kinsman, when the king of the people had in lordly language saluted the dear one in words that were formal. The daughter of Heorot coursed through the building, carrying mead cups. She loved the retainers, tendered the beakers to the high-minded Geatmen. Higelac gan then, pleasantly plying his companion with questions, in the high-towering palace. A curious interest tormented his spirit. What meaning to see in the sea Geats' adventures? Beowulf worthy, how throve your journeying, when thou thoughtest suddenly far o'er the salt streams to seek an encounter, a battle at Heorot? Hast bettered for Hrothgar, the famous folk leader, his far-published sorrows, any at all? In agony billows I mused upon torture, distrusted the journey of the beloved liegeman. I long time did pray thee by no means to seek out the murderous spirit, to suffer the South Danes themselves to decide on grappling with Grendel. To God I am thankful to be suffered to see thee safe from thy journey. Beowulf answered, Bairn of old Ecgtheow, 'tis hidden by no means, Higelac chieftain, from many of men, the meeting so famous. What mournful moments of me and of Grendel were passed in the place where he pressing affliction, on the victory Scyldings scathefully brought anguish forever, that all I avenged, so that any under heaven of the kinsmen of Grendel needeth not boast of that cry in the morning, who longest liveth of the loth-going kindred, encompassed by moorland. I came in my journey to the royal ring hall, Hrothgar to greet there. Soon did the famous scion of Helfdene, when he understood fully the spirit that led me, assign me a seat with the son of his bosom. The troop was in joyance, Mead glee greater, neath arch of the ether not ever beheld I mid-hall building holders. The highly famed queen, peace tie of peoples, oft passed through the building, cheered the young troopers. She oft tendered a hero, a beautiful ring band, ere she went to her sitting. Oft the daughter of Hrothgar in view of the courtiers, to the earls at the end the ale-vessel carried, whom free-aware I heard then hall-sitter's title, when nail-adorned jewels she gave to the heroes, gold-bedecked, youthful, to the glad son of Froda. Her faith has been plighted. The friend of the Scyldings, the guard of the kingdom, hath given his sanction, and counts it a vantage, for a part of the quarrels, a portion of hatred, to pay with the woman. Somewhere not rarely, when the ruler has fallen, the life-taking lance relaxeth its fury for a brief breathing spell, though the bride be charming. It well may discomfit the prince of the Heathobards, and each of the thanemen of earls that attend him, when he goes to the building escorting the woman, that a noble-born Daneman the knights should be feasting. There gleam on his person the leavings of elders hard and ring-bright, Heathobards' treasure, while they wielded their arms, till they misled to the battle their own dear lives and beloved companions. He saith at the banquet who the collar beholdeth, an ancient ash-warrior who earlman's destruction clearly recalleth, cruel his spirit, sadly beginneth sounding the youthful thane-champion's spirit through the thoughts of his bosom, war-grief to waken, and this word answer speaketh, Art thou able, my friend, to know when thou seest it, the brand which thy father bare to the conflict in his latest adventure, neath visor of helmet, the dearly loved iron, where Danemen did slay him, and brave mooded Scyldings, on the fall of the heroes, when vengeance was sleeping, the slaughter-place wielded, e'en now some man of the murderer's progeny exulting in ornaments enters the building, boasts of his blood shedding, off beareth the jewel, which thou shouldst wholly hold in possession. So he urgeth and mindeth on every occasion with woe-bringing words, till waxeth the season, when the woman's thane for the works of his father, the bill having bitten, blood-gory sleepeth, fated to perish. The other one thenceward scapeth alive, the land knoweth thoroughly. Then the oaths of the earlmen on each side are broken, when rancours unresting are raging in Ingeld, and his wife love waxeth less warm after sorrow. So the Heathobards' favour not faithful, I reckon, their part in the treaty not true to the Danemen, their friendship not fast. I further shall tell thee more about Grendel, that thou fully mayest hear, ornament giver. what afterward came from the hand-rush of heroes. When heaven's bright jewel o'er earth fields had glided, the stranger came raging, the horrible night fiend, us for to visit, where wholly unharmed the hall we were guarding. To Honchio happened a hopeless contention. Death to the doomed one, dead he fell foremost, girded war champion. To him, Grendel became then, to the vassal distinguished, a tooth-weaponed murderer, the well-beloved henchman's body, all swallowed. Not the earlier off empty of hand did the bloody-toothed murderer, mindful of evils, wish to escape from the gold-giver's palace, but sturdy of strength he strove to outdo me, hand ready grappled. A glove was suspended, spacious and wondrous, in art fetters fastened, which was fashioned entirely by touch of the craftsman, from the dragon's skin by the devil's devices. He down in its depths would do me unsadly, one among many, deed-doer raging, though sinless he saw me. Not so could it happen when I in my anger upright did stand. 'Tis too long to recount how requital I furnished for every evil to the earlman's destroyer. 'Twas there, my prince, that I proudly distinguished thy land with my labors. He left and retreated. He lived his life a little while longer, yet his right hand guarded his footstep in Heorot, and sad-mooded, thence to the sea-bottom, fell he mournful in mind. For the might rush of battle, the friend of the Scyldings with gold that was plated, with ornaments many, much requited me, when daylight had dawned, and down to the banquet we had sat us together. There was chanting and joyance. The age-stricken Scylding asked many questions, and of old times related. Oft light-ringing harp strings, joy-telling wood, were touched by the brave one. Now he uttered measures, mourning and truthful. Then the large-hearted land king, a legend of wonder, truthfully told us. Now troubled with years, the age-hoary warrior afterward began to mourn for the might that marked him in youth days. His breast within boiled when burdened with winters, much he remembered. From morning till night then we joyed us therein as etiquette suffered, till the second night season came unto earthfolk. Then early thereafter, the mother of Grendel was ready for vengeance. Wretched she journeyed. Her son had death ravished, the wrath of the Geatmen. The horrible woman avenged her offspring, and with mighty main strength murdered a hero. There the spirit of Aeshere, Aged advisor, was ready to vanish. Nor when morn had lightened were they anywise suffered to consume him with fire, folk of the Danemen, the death-weakened hero, nor the beloved liegeman to lay on the pyre. She the corpse had off-carried in the clutch of the foeman, neath mountain brook's flood. To Hrothgar 'twas saddest of pains that ever had preyed on the chieftain. By the life of thee, the land prince then me, besought very sadly in sea currents' eddies, to display my prowess, to peril my safety, might deeds accomplish. Much did he promise. I found then the famous flood current's cruel, horrible depth warder. A while unto us too hand was in common. The currents were seething with gore that was clotted, and Grendel's fierce mother's head I off-hacked in the hall at the bottom with huge reaching sword edge. Hardly I wrested my life from her clutches. Not doomed was I then, but the warden of earlmen afterward gave me jewels in quantity, kinsman of Helfdene. So the beloved land prince lived in decorum. I had missed no rewards, no meeds of my prowess, but he gave me jewels regarding my wishes, Helfdene his bairn. I'll bring them to thee then, atheling of earlmen, offer them gladly. And still unto thee is all my affection, but few of my folk-kin find I surviving but thee, dear Higelac. Bade he and then to carry the boar image, banner, battle-high helmet, iron-grey armor, the excellent weapon. In song measures said, this suit for the battle Hrothgar presented me, bade me expressly, wise-mooded atheling, thereafter to tell thee the whole of its history. Said King Herogar owned it, Dane prince for long. Yet he wished not to give then the mail to his son, though dearly he loved him, Hereward the hardy. Hold all in joyance. I heard that there followed hard on the jewels 2 braces of stallions of striking resemblance, dappled and yellow. He granted him usance of horses and treasures. So a kinsman should bear him, no web of treachery weave for another, nor by cunning craftiness cause the destruction of trusty companion. Most precious to Higelac, the bold one in battle, was the bairn of his sister, and each unto other mindful of favours. I am told that to Hygd he proffered the necklace, wonder gem rare that Wealhtheow gave him, the troop leader's daughter, a trio of horses, slender and saddle bright. Soon did the jewel embellish her bosom when the beer feast was over. So Ecgtheow's bairn brave did prove him, war-famous man by deeds that were valiant. He lived in honour, beloved companions slew not carousing. His mood was not cruel, but by hand strength hugest of heroes then living. The brave one retained the bountiful gift that the Lord had allowed him. Long was he wretched, so that sons of the Geatmen accounted him worthless, and the lord of the liegemen Loth was to do him mickle of honour when mead cups were passing. They fully believed him idle and sluggish, an indolent atheling. To the honour-blessed man there came requital for the cuts he had suffered. The folk troop's defender bade fetch to the building the heirloom of Hrethel, embellished with gold, so the brave one enjoined it. There was jewel no richer in the form of a weapon mong Geats of that era. In Beowulf's keeping he placed it and gave him 7 of thousands, manor and lordship. Common to both was land mong the people, estate and inherited rights and possessions, to the second one specially spacious dominions, to the one who was better. It afterward happened in days that followed, befell the battle thanes, after Higelac's death, and when Herdred was murdered, with weapons of warfare, 'neath well-covered targets, when valiant battle-men in victor bands sought him, war-sylphing heroes harassed the nephew of Heorot in battle. To Beowulf's keeping turned there in time extensive dominions. He fittingly ruled them of 50 of winters. He a man-ruler wise was, manor-ward old, till a certain one Gan on gloom-darkening nights a dragon to govern, who guarded a treasure, a high-rising stone cliff on heath that was greyish. A path 'neath it lay, unknown unto mortals. Someone of earthmen entered the mountain. The heathenish Hoard laid hold of with ardour. He sought of himself who sorely did harm him, but for need very pressing, the servant of one of the sons of the heroes hate blows evaded, seeking for shelter, and the sin-driven warrior took refuge within there. He early looked in it, when the onset surprised him. He a gem vessel saw there. Many of such like ancient ornaments in the earth cave were lying, as in days of yore someone of men of illustrious lineage, as a legacy monstrous, there had secreted them, careful and thoughtful, dear valued jewels. Death had oft snatched them in the days of the past, and the one man moreover of the flower of the folk who fared there the longest, was fain to defer it, friend mourning warder, a little longer to be left in enjoyment of long-lasting treasure. A barrow all ready stood on the plain the stream currents nigh to, new by the Ness edge, unnethe 28 of approaching. The keeper of rings carried within a ponderous deal of the treasure of nobles, of gold that was beaten. Briefly he spake then, "Hold thou, O earth, now heroes no more may, the earnings of earlmen. Lo, erst in thy bosom worthy men won them. War death hath ravished, perilous life-bale, all my warriors, liegemen beloved, who this life have forsaken, who hall pleasures saw. No sword-bearer have I, and no one to burnish the gold-plated vessel, the high-valued beaker. My heroes are vanished. The hardy helmet behung with gilding shall be reaved of its riches. The ring-cleansers slumber who were charged to have ready visors for battle, and the byrnie that bided in battle encounter or breaking of war-shields, the bite of the edges molds with the hero. The ring-twisted armor, its lord being lifeless, no longer may journey, hanging by heroes. Harp joy is vanished, the rapture of Glee wood. No excellent falcon swoops through the building. No swift-footed charger grindeth the gravel. A grievous destruction, no few of the world folk widely hath scattered. So, woeful of spirit one after all, lamented mournfully, moaning in sadness by day and by night, till death with its billows dashed on his spirit. Then the ancient dusk-scather found the great treasure standing all open, he who flaming and fiery flies to the barrows, naked war-dragon, nightly escapeth encompassed with fire. Men under heaven widely beheld him. 'Tis said that he looks for the hoard in the earth, where old he is guarding the heathenish treasure. He'll be nowise the better. So 300 winters the waster of peoples held upon earth that excellent Heorot Hall, till the forementioned earlman angered him bitterly. The beat-plated beaker he bare to his chieftain, and fullest remission for all his remissness begged of his liege lord. Then the hoard was discovered, the treasure was taken, his petition was granted. The lorn-mooded liegeman, his lord regarded the old work of earth-folk. 'Twas the earliest occasion. When the dragon awoke, the strife was renewed there. He snuffed long the stone then. Stout-hearted found he the footprint of foemen. Too far had he gone with cunning craftiness close to the head of the fire-spewing dragon. So undoomed he may scape from anguish and exile with ease who possesseth the favor of heaven. The hoard warden eagerly searched o'er the ground then, would meet with the person that caused him sorrow while in slumber reclining. Gleaming and wild he oft went round the cavern, all of it outward. Not any of earthmen was seen in that desert. Yet he joyed in the battle, rejoiced in the conflict. Oft he turned to the barrow, sought for the gem cup. This he soon perceived then that some man or other had discovered the gold, the famous folk treasure. Not fain did the hoard ward wait until evening. Then the ward of the barrow was angry in spirit. The loathed one wished to pay for the dear-valued drink cup with fire. Then the day was done as the dragon would have it. He no longer would wait on the wall, but departed fire-impelled, flaming. Fearful the start was to earls in the land, as it early thereafter to their giver of gold was grievously ended. The stranger began then to vomit forth fire, to burn the great manor. The blaze then glimmered for anguish to earlmen. Not anything living was the hateful air-goer willing to leave there. The war of the worm widely was noticed. The feud of the foemen afar and anear, how the enemy injured the earls of the Geatmen, harried with hatred. Back he hied to the treasure, to the well-hidden cavern ere the coming of daylight. He had circled with fire the folk of those regions, with brand and burning. In the barrow he trusted, in the wall and his war might. The weaning deceived him. Then straight was the horror to Beowulf published, early forsooth, that his own native homestead, the best of buildings, was burning and melting, gift-seat of Geatmen. 'Twas a grief to the spirit of the good-mooded hero, the greatest of sorrows. The wise one weened then that wielding his kingdom 'gainst the ancient commandments, he had bitterly angered the Lord everlasting. With lorn meditations his bosom welled inward, as was no wise his custom. The fire-spewing dragon fully had wasted the fastness of warriors, the waterland outward, the manor with fire. The folk-ruling hero, prince of the Weders, was planning to wreak him. The warmen's defender bade them to make him, earlman's atheling, an excellent war-shield, wholly of iron. Fully he knew then that wood from the forest was helpless to aid him, shield against fire. The long worthy ruler must live the last of his limited earth days, of life in the world and the worm along with him, though he long had been holding hoard wealth in plenty. Then the ring prince disdained to seek with a war band. With army extensive, the air-going ranger, he felt no fear of the foeman's assaults, and he counted for little the might of the dragon, his power and prowess, for previously dared he, a heap of hostility, hazarded dangers, war-thane, when Hrothgar's palace he cleansed, conquering combatant, clutched in the battle the kinsman of Grendel, of kindred detested. 'Twas of hand-fights not least where Higelac was slaughtered, when the king of the Geatmen with clashings of battle, friend lord of folks in Frisian dominions, offspring of Hrothgar perished through sword drink, with battle swords beaten. Thence Beowulf came then, on self-help relying, swam through the waters. He bare on his arm, lone going, 30 outfits of armor, when the ocean he mounted. The Hetwars by no means had need to be boastful of their fighting afoot, who forward to meet him carried their war-shields. Not many returned from the brave-mooded battle night back to their homesteads. Ecgtheow's bairn o'er the bite-courses swam then, lone-goer lorn to his land-folk returning, where hig to him tendered treasure and kingdom, rings and dominion. Her son she not trusted, to be able to keep the kingdom devised him 'gainst alien races, on the death of King Higelac. Yet the sad ones succeeded not in persuading the atheling in any way ever to act as a suzerain to Herdred, or promise to govern the kingdom. Yet with friendly counsel in the folk he sustained him, gracious with honor till he grew to be older, wielded the weeders. Wide-fleeing outlaws, O their sons, sought him o'er the waters. They had stirred a revolt against the helm of the Sylfings, the best of the sea kings, who in Swedish dominions distributed treasure, distinguished folk leader. 'Twas the end of his earth days, injury fatal. By swing of the sword he received as a greeting, offspring of Higelac, on Genthiau's bairn. Later departed to visit his homestead, when Herdred was dead. Let Beowulf rule them, govern the Geatmen. Good was that folk king. He planned requital for the folk leader's ruin in days thereafter, to Edgils the wretched becoming an enemy. Oh, their son then went with a war troop o'er the wide-stretching currents with warriors and weapons. With woe journeys cold he after avenged him. The king's life he took. So he came off uninjured from all of his battles, perilous fights, offspring of Ecgtheow, from his deeds of daring, till that day most momentous, when he fate-driven fared to fight with the dragon. With 11 companions, the prince of the Geatmen went lowering with fury to look at the fire drake. Inquiring, he'd found how the feud had arisen. Hate to his heroes. The highly famed gem vessel was brought to his keeping through the hand of the informer. That in the throng was 13th of heroes, that caused the beginning of conflict so bitter, captive and wretched, must sad-mooded thenceward point out the place. He passed then unwillingly to the spot where he knew of the notable cavern, the cave under earth, not far from the ocean. The anger of eddies, which inward was full of jewels and wires, a warden uncanny, warrior-weaponed, warded the treasure, old under earth, no easy possession for any of earth folk access to get to. Then the battle-brave atheling sat on the naze edge, while the gold friend of Geatmen gracious saluted his fireside companions. Woe was his spirit, death-boding, wavering, weird very near him, who must seize the old hero, his sole treasure look for, dragging aloof his life from his body. Not flesh hidden long was the folk leader's spirit. Beowulf spake, Ecgtheow's son. I survived in my youth days many a conflict hours of onset, that all I remember. I was 7 winters old when the Jewel Prince took me, high lord of heroes at the hands of my father. Hrethel the hero king had me in keeping, gave me treasure and feasting, our kinship remembered. Not ever was I any less dear to him knight in the boroughs than the bairns of his household, Heribald and Haethcyn and Higelac mine. To the eldest unjustly by acts of a kinsman was murder-bed strewn, since him Haethcyn from Hornbow, his sheltering chieftain, shot with an arrow, erred in his aim, and injured his kinsman, one brother the other, with blood-sprinkled spear. 'Twas a feeless fight, finished in malice, sad to his spirit. The folk prince, however, had to part from existence with vengeance untaken. So to hoar-headed hero 'tis heavily crushing to live to see his son as he rideth young on the gallows. Then measures he chanteth, a song of sorrow, when his son is hanging for the raven's delight, and aged and hoary, he is unable to offer any assistance. Every morning his offspring's departure is constant recalled. He cares not to wait for the birth of an heir in his burrow enclosures, since that one through death pain the deeds hath experienced. He heart-grieved beholds in the house of his son the wine-building wasted, the wind-lodging places reaved of their roaring. The riders are sleeping, the knights in the grave. There's no sound of the harpwood, joy in the yards, as of yore were familiar. He seeks then his chamber, singeth a woe-song one for the other. All too extensive seemed homesteads and plains. So the helm of the Weeders, mindful of Heribald heart-sorrow carried, stirred with emotion, nowise was able to wreak his ruin on the ruthless destroyer. He was unable to follow the warrior with hatred, with deeds that were direful, though dear, he not held him. Then, pressed by the pang this pain occasioned him, he gave up Glee, godlight elected. He left to his sons, as the man that is rich does, his land and fortress, when from life he departed. Then was crime and hostility, twixt Swedes and Geatmen, o'er wide-stretching water warring was mutual, burdensome hatred, when Hrethel had perished, and Ongentheo's offspring were active and valiant, wished not to hold to peace over sea, but round Hreosna Beor often accomplished cruelest massacre. This my kinsman avenged, the feud and fury, as 'tis found on inquiry, though one of them paid it with forfeit of life joys, with price that was hard. The struggle became then fatal to Hnaef, lord of the Geatmen. Then I heard that at morning one brother the other, with edges of irons egged on to murder, where Genthiau maketh onset on Eofor. The helmet crashed, the hoary-haired sylphing sword-smitten fell. His hand then remembered feud hate sufficient, refused not the death blow. The gems that he gave me, with jewel-bright sword, I quitted in contest, as occasion was offered. Land he allowed me, life-joy at homestead, manor to live on. Little he needed from Gepids or Danes or in Sweden to look for trooper less true, with treasure to buy him. Mong foot soldiers ever in front, I would hie me, alone in the vanguard, and evermore gladly warfare shall wage, while this weapon endureth, that late and early often did serve me, when I proved before heroes the slayer of Degreffin, knight of the human. He by no means was suffered to the king of the Frisians to carry the jewels, the breast decoration. But the banner possessor bowed in the battle, brave-mooded Atheling. No weapon was slayer, but war-grapple broke then the surge of his spirit, his body destroying. Now shall weapon's edge make war for the treasure, and hand and firm sword. Beowulf spake then, boast words uttered, the latest occasion. I braved in my youth days battles unnumbered, still am I willing the struggle to look for, fame deeds perform, folk warden prudent, if the hateful despoiler forth from his cavern seeketh me out. Each of the heroes, helm-bearers sturdy, he thereupon greeted Beloved co-liegeman, his last salutation. No brand would I bear, no blade for the dragon, wist I away my word boast to accomplish else with the monster, as with Grendel I did it. But fire in the battle hot I expect there, furious flame burning, so I fixed on my body target and war mail. The ward of the barrow I'll not flee from a foot-length the foeman uncanny. At the wall 'twill befall us as fate decreeth, each one's creator. I am eager in spirit, with the winged war hero to away with all boasting. Bide on the barrow with burnies protected, earls in armor, which of us two may better bear his disaster when the battle is over. 'Tis number matter of yours, and man cannot do it, but me and me only, to measure his strength with the monster of malice, might deeds to accomplish. I with prowess shall gain the gold, or the battle. Direful death woe will drag off your ruler. The mighty champion rose by his shield then, brave under helmet, in battle mail went he, neath steep rising stone cliffs, the strength he relied on, of one man alone, no work for a coward. Then he saw by the wall who a great many battles had lived through most worthy, when foot troops collided, stone arches standing, stout-hearted champion, saw a brook from the barrow bubbling out thenceward. The flood of the fountain was fuming with war flame. Not nigh to the hoard, for season the briefest could he brave, without burning, the abyss that was yawning, the drake was so fiery. The prince of the Veders caused then that words came from his bosom, so fierce was his fury. The firm-hearted shouted, his battle-clear voice came in resounding, neath the gray-colored stone. Stirred was his hatred. The Hoard ward distinguished the speech of a man. Time was no longer to look out for friendship. The breath of the monster issued forth first, vapory war sweat, out of the stone cave. The earth re-echoed. The earl neath the barrow lifted his shield, lord of the Geatmen, towered the terrible stranger. The ring-twisted creature's heart was then ready to seek for a struggle. The excellent battle king first brandished his weapon, the ancient heirloom of edges unblunted. To the death planners twain was terror from other. The lord of the troopers intrepidly stood then, 'gainst his high-rising shield, when the dragon coiled him quickly together. In corslet he bided. He went then in blazes, bended and striding, hasting him forward, his life and body. The targe well protected, for time period shorter than wish demanded for the well-renowned leader, where he then, for the first day, was forced to be victor, famous in battle, as fate had not willed it. The lord of the Geatmen uplifted his hand then, smiting the fire drake with sword that was precious. That bright on the bone the blade edge did weaken, bit more feebly than his folk leader needed, burdened with bale griefs. Then the barrow protector, when the sword blow had fallen, was fierce in his spirit. Flinging his fires, flamings of battle gleamed then afar. The gold friend of Vader's boasted no conquests. His battle sword failed him, naked in conflict, as by no means it ought to, long trusty weapon. 'Twas no slight undertaking that Extheo's famous offspring would leave the Drake cavern's bottom. He must live in some region, other than this by the will of the dragon, as each one of earthman existence must forfeit. 'Twas early thereafter the excellent warriors met with each other, anew and afresh. The Hoard took heart, gasps heaved then his bosom. Sorrow he suffered encircled with fire who the people erst governed. His companions by no means were banded about him, bairns of the princes, with valorous spirit, but they sped to the forest, seeking for safety. The soul deeps of one were ruffled by care. Kinlove can never aught in him waver who well doth consider. The son of Weohstan was Wiglaf, entitled Shield Warrior Precious, Prince of the Sylfings, Elfhere's kinsman. He saw his dear liege lord enduring the heat, neath helmet and visor. Then he minded the holding that erst he had given him, the Wegmunding warrior's wealth-blessed homestead. Each of the folk rights his father had wielded. He was hot for the battle. His hand seized the target. The yellow bark shield, he unsheathed his old weapon, which was known among earthmen as the relic of Eanmund, Other's offspring, whom, exiled and friendless, Weohstan did slay with sword edge in battle, and carried his kinsman the clear shining helmet, the ring-made byrnie, the old giant weapon that Onela gave him, his boon fellow's armor, ready war trappings, he the feud did not mention, though he'd fatally smitten the son of his brother. Many a half-year held he the treasures, the bill and the byrnie, till his bairn became able, like his father before him, fame deeds to accomplish. Then he gave him Mong Gaitman a goodly array of weeds for his warfare. He went from life then old on his journey. 'Twas the earliest time then that the youthful champion might charge in the battle, aiding his liege lord. His spirit was dauntless. Nor did kinsman's bequest quail at the battle. This the dragon discovered on their coming together. Wiglaf uttered many a right saying, said to his fellows. Sad was his spirit. I remember the time when, tasting the mead cup, we promised in the hall the Lord of us all who gave us these ring treasures, that this battle equipment, swords and helmets, we'd certainly quite him, should need of such aid ever befall him. In the war band he chose us for this journey spontaneously, stirred us to glory and gave me these jewels, since he held and esteemed us trustworthy spearmen, hardy helm-bearers. Though this hero achievement our Lord intended alone to accomplish, ward of his people for most of achievements doings audacious, he did among earth folk. The day is now come when the ruler of earthmen needeth the vigor of valiant heroes. Let us wend us towards him, the war prince to succor, while the heat yet rageth horrible firefight. God wot in me, 'tis mickle the liefer the blaze should embrace my body and eat it with my treasure bestower. Meseemeth not proper to bear our battle shields back to our country, lest first we are able to fell and destroy the long-hating foeman, to defend the life of the prince of the Weders. Well do I know 'tisn't earned by his exploits. He only of Geatman's sorrow should suffer. Sink in the battle. Brand and helmet to us both shall be common. Shield cover, byrnie. Through the bale smoke he stalked then, went under helmet to the help of his chieftain, briefly discoursing. Beowulf, dear, perform thou all fully, as thou formerly saidst, in thy youthful years, that while yet thou livedst thou wouldst let thine honor not ever be lessened. Thy life thou shalt save, mighty in actions, atheling undaunted. With all of thy vigor, I'll give thee assistance. The dragon came raging, wild-mooded stranger when these words had been uttered. 'Twas the second occasion. Seeking his enemies, men that were hated with hot gleaming fire waves. With blaze billows burned the board to its edges. The fight armor failed then to furnish assistance to the youthful spear hero, but the young Aegjad stripling quickly advanced neath his kinsman's war target, since his own had been ground in the grip of the fire. Then the warrior king was careful of glory. He soundly smote with sword for the battle, that it stood in the head by hatred driven. Nagling was shivered, the old and iron-made brand of Beowulf in battle deceived him. 'Twas denied him that edges of irons were able to help in the battle. The hand was too mighty, which every weapon, as I heard on inquiry, outstruck in its stroke, when to struggle he carried. The wonderful war sword, it waxed him no better. Then the people despoiler, third of his onsets, fierce raging fire-drake, of feud-hate was mindful, charged on the strong one, when chance was afforded, heated and war-grim, seized on his neck with teeth that were bitter. He bloody did wax with soul-gore seething, sword-blood in waves boiled. Then I heard that at need of the king of the people the upstanding earlman exhibited prowess, vigor, and courage, as suited his nature. He his head did not guard, but the high-minded liegeman's hand was consumed, when he succored his kinsman. So he struck the strife-bringing strange-comer lower, earl-thane in armor, that in went the weapon gleaming and plated, that gan then the fire later to lessen. The liege lord himself then retained his consciousness, brandished his war-knife, battle-sharp, bitter, that he bare on his armor. The wedder lord cut the worm in the middle. They had felled the enemy. Life drove out then puissant prowess. The pair had destroyed him, land chiefs related. So a liegeman should prove him, a thane-man when needed. To the prince 'twas the last of his era of conquest by his own great achievements, the latest of world deeds. The wound then began, which the earth-dwelling dragon erstwhile had wrought him to burn and to swell. He soon then discovered that bitterest bale-woe in his bosom was raging, poison within. The atheling advanced then, that along by the wall he prudent of spirit might sit on a settle. He saw the giant work, how arches of stone strengthened with pillars the earth hall eternal inward supported. Then the long-worthy liegeman laved with his hand the far-famous chieftain, gory from sword-edge, refreshing the face of his friend lord and ruler, sated with battle, unbinding his helmet. Beowulf answered, of his injury spake he, his wound that was fatal. He was fully aware he had lived his allotted life-days, enjoying the pleasures of earth. Then past was entirely his measure of days, death very near. My son I would give now my battle equipments. Had any of heirs been after me granted, along of my body. This people I governed 50 of winters. No king 'mong my neighbors dared to encounter me with comrades in battle, try me with terror. The time to me ordered I bided at home, mine own kept fitly, sought me no snares, swore me not many oaths in injustice. Joy over all this I'm able to have, though ill with my death wounds. Hence the ruler of earthmen need not charge me with the killing of kinsmen, when cometh my life out forth from my body. Fare thou with haste now to behold the hoard neath the hoar greyish stone. Well-loved Wiglaf, now the worm is a-lying, sore wounded sleepeth, disseised of his treasure. Go thou in haste, that treasures of old I, gold wealth may gaze on, together see lying the ether-bright jewels, be easier able, having the heap of hoard gems, to yield my life and the land-folk whom long I have governed. Then heard I that Wihstan's son very quickly, these words being uttered, heeded his liege lord wounded and war-sick, went in his armor, his well-woven ring-mail, neath the roof of the barrow. Then the trusty retainer treasure gems many victorious saw, when the seat he came near to. Gold treasure sparkling spread on the bottom, wonder on the wall, and the worm creature's cavern. The ancient dawn-flyers' vessels a-standing, cups of the ancients of cleansers bereaved, robbed of their ornaments. There were helmets in numbers, old and rust-eaten, arm-bracelets many, artfully woven. Wealth can easily, gold on the sea-bottom, turn into vanity, each one of earthmen, arm him who pleaseth. And he saw there lying an all-golden banner high o'er the hoard, of hand-wonders greatest, linked with lacets. A light from it sparkled, that the floor of the cavern he was able to look on, to examine the jewels. Sight of the dragon, not any was offered, but edge off carried him. Then I heard that the hero the hoard treasure plundered, the giant work ancient reeved in the cavern, bare on his bosom the beakers and platters, as himself would fain have it, and took off the standard, the brightest of beacons. The bill had erst injured, its edge was of iron, the old ruler's weapon, him who long had watched as ward of the jewels, who fire terror carried hot for the treasure, rolling in battle, in middlemost darkness, till murdered he perished. The messenger hastened, not loth to return, hurried by jewels. Curiosity urged him if, excellent-mooded, alive he should find the lord of the Weders mortally wounded at the place where he left him. Mid the jewels he found then the famous old chieftain, his liege lord beloved, at his life's end gory. He thereupon gan to lave him with water, till the point of his word pierced his breast hoard. Beowulf spake. The gold gems he noticed, the old one in sorrow. For the jewels I look on thanks, do I utter for all to the ruler, wielder of worship, with words of devotion, the Lord everlasting, that he let me such treasures gain for my people, ere death overtook me. Since I've bartered the aged life to me granted for treasure of jewels, attend ye henceforward the wants of the war-thanes. I can wait here no longer. The battle-famed bid ye to build them a grave hill, bright when I'm burned at the brim-current's limit. As a memory mark to the men I have governed, aloft it shall tower on Walesness uprising, that earls of the ocean hereafter may call it Beowulf's barrow. Those who barks ever dashing from a distance shall drive o'er the darkness of waters. The bold-mooded troop-lord took from his neck then the ring that was golden, gave to his liegeman, the youthful war-hero, his gold-flashing helmet, his collar and war-mail, bade him well to enjoy them. Thou art latest left of the line of our kindred, of Wegmunding people. Weird hath oft-carried all of my kinsmen to the Creator's glory, earls in their vigor, I shall after them fare. 'Twas the aged liege-lord's last spoken word in his musings of spirit, ere he mounted the fire, the battle-waves burning, from his bosom departed his soul to seek the sainted one's glory. It had woefully chanced then the youthful retainer to behold on earth the most ardent beloved at his life-day's limit, lying there helpless. The slayer too lay there, of life all bereaved, horrible earth-drake, harassed with sorrow. The round-twisted monster was permitted no longer to govern the ring-hordes, but edges of war-swords mightily seized him, battle-sharp, sturdy, leavings of hammers that still from his wounds. The flyer from Farland fell to the earth. Hard by his hoard house hopped he at midnight. Not air through the air, nor exulting in jewels, suffered them to see him. But he sank then to earthward, through the hero chief's handwork. I heard sure it throve then, but few in the land of liegemen of valor, though of every achievement bold he had proved him, to run 'gainst the breath of the venomous scather, or the hall of the treasure to trouble with hand-blows, if he watching had found the ward of the Heorot Hall on the barrow abiding. Beowulf's part of the treasure of jewels was paid for with death. Each of the twain had attained to the end of life so unlasting. Not long was the time till the tardy at battle returned from the thicket, the timid truce-breakers 10 altogether, who durst not before play with the lances in the prince of the people's pressing emergency, but blushing with shame, with shields they betook them, with arms and armor where the old one was lying. They gazed upon Wiglaf. He was sitting exhausted. Foot-going fighter, not far from the shoulders of the lord of the people, would rouse him with water. No whit did it help him, though he hoped for it keenly. He was able on earth not at all in the leader life to retain, and no wise to alter the will of the wielder. The world ruler's power would govern the actions of each one of heroes, as yet he is doing. From the young one forthwith then could grim-worded greeting be got for him quickly, whose courage had failed him. Wiglaf discoursed then. Weohstan his son, sad-mooded hero, looked on the hated. He whose soothness will utter can say that the liege lord who gave you the jewels, the ornament armor wherein ye are standing, when on ale-bench often he offered to hallman helmet and byrnie, the prince to his liegeman, as best upon earth he was able to find him, that he wildly wasted his war-gear undoubtedly when battle o'ertook him. The troop-king no need had to glory in comrades, yet God permitted him, victory-wielder, with weapon unaided himself to avenge when vigor was needed. I life protection, but little was able to give him in battle, and I gan, notwithstanding, helping my kinsman, my strength overtaxing. He waxed the weaker, when with weapon I smote on my mortal opponent. The fire less strongly flamed from his bosom. Too few of protectors came round the king at the critical moment. Now must ornament-taking and weapon-bestowing, home joyance all, cease for your kindred. food for the people. Each of your warriors must needs be bereaved of rights that he holdeth in landed possessions, when far-away nobles shall learn of your leaving your lord so basely the dastardly deed. Death is more pleasant to every earlman than infamous life is. Then he charged that the battle be announced at the hedge, up o'er the cliff edge, where the earl troopers bided. The whole of the morning, mood-wretched sat them, bearers of battle shields, both things expecting, the end of his lifetime and the coming again of the liege lord beloved. Little reserved he of news that was known, who the Ness cliff did travel, but he truly discoursed to all that could hear him. Now the free-giving friend lord of the folk of the Veders, the folk prince of Geatman, is fast in his deathbed, by the deeds of the dragon in deathbed abideth. Along with him lieth his life-taking foeman slain with knife wounds. He was wholly unable to injure at all the ill-planning monster, with bite of his sword edge. Wiglaf is sitting, offspring of Weaston, up over Beowulf, earl o'er another whose end day hath reached him. Head watch holdeth o'er heroes unliving, for friend and for foeman. The folk now expecteth a season of strife when the death of the folk king to Frankmen and Frisians in far lands is published. The war hatred waxed warm 'gainst the human, when Higelac came with an army of vessels faring to Friesland, where the Frankmen in battle humbled him and bravely with overmight, accomplished that the mail-clad warrior must sink in the battle, fell mid his folk troop, no fret gems presented, the atheling to earlmen, I was denied us Meerwing's mercy. The men of the Swedelands for truce or for truth trust, I but little. But widely 'twas known that near Ravenswood on Genthiau sundered Heathkin the Hrethling from life-joys, when for pride overweening the war-sylphings first did seek the Geatman with savage intentions. Early did Othaire's age-laden father, old and terrible, give blow in requital, killing the sea-king, the queen-mother rescued, the old one his consort deprived of her gold, Onela's mother, and Othaire's also, and then followed the feud-nursing foemen till hardly, reaved of their ruler, they Ravenswood entered. Then with vast-numbered forces he assaulted the remnant, weary with wounds. Woe often promised the livelong night to the sad-hearted war-troop. Said he at morning would kill them with edges of weapons, some on the gallows for glee to the fowls. Aid came after to the anxious in spirit at dawn of the day, after Higelac's bugle and trumpet sound heard they, when the good one proceeded and faring followed the flower of the troopers. The blood-stained trace of Swedes and Geatmen, the death rush of warmen, widely was noticed, how the folks with each other feud did awaken. The worthy one went then with well-beloved comrades, old and dejected to go to the fastness. Ongentheow Earl upward then turned him. Of Higelac's battle he'd heard on inquiry, the exultant one's prowess, despaired of resistance, with earls of the ocean to be able to struggle. 'Gainst sea-going sailors to save the hoard treasure, his wife and his children, he fled after thenceward old 'neath the earth wall. Then was offered pursuance to the braves of the Swedemen, the banner to Higelac. They fared then forth o'er the field of protection, when the Hrethling heroes hedgeward had thronged them. Then with edges of irons was Ongentheow driven, the grey-haired to tarry, that the troop ruler had to suffer the power solely of Eofor. Wulf then wildly with weapon assaulted him, Wonred his son, that for swing 29 of the edges, the blood from his body burst out in currents, forth 'neath his hair. He feared not, however, grey-headed Sylfing, but speedily quieted the wasting wound-stroke with worse exchange, when the king of the Thane troop thither did turn him. The wise-mooded son of Wonred was powerless to give a return blow to the age-hoary man, but his head-shielding helmet first hewed he to pieces, that flecked with gore. Perforce he did totter, fell to the earth. Not fey was he yet then, but up did he spring, though an edge-wound had reached him. Then Higelac's vassal, valiant and dauntless, when his brother lay dead, made his broad-bladed weapon, giant sword ancient, defense of the giants, bound o'er the shield wall. The folk prince succumbed then, shepherd of people, was pierced to the vitals. There were many attendants who bound up his kinsman, carried him quickly when occasion was granted, that the place of the slain they were suffered to manage. This pending, one hero plundered the other, his armor of iron from Ongentheow ravished, his hard sword hilted and helmet together, the old one's equipments he carried to Higelac. He the jewels received, and rewards, mid the troopers graciously promised, and so did accomplish. The king of the Vedders requited the war rush, Hrethel's descendant, when home he repaired him, to Eofor and Wulf with wide lavish treasures, to each of them granted 100 of thousands in land and rings wrought out of wire. None upon mid-earth needed to twit him with the gifts he gave them, when glory they conquered. And to Eofor then gave he his one only daughter, the honor of home, as an earnest of favor. That's the feud and hatred, as we night will happen. The anger of earthmen, that earls of the Swedemen will visit on us, when they hear that our leader lifeless is lying, he who long time protected his hoard and kingdom gainst hating assailers, who on the fall of the heroes defended of yore the deed mighty Scyldings did for the troopers what best did avail them, and further moreover hero deeds accomplished. Now is haste most fitting that the lord of liegemen we look upon yonder, and that one carry on journey to death pyre, who ring presents gave us. Not aught of it all shall melt with the brave one. There's a mass of bright jewels, gold beyond measure, gruesomely purchased, and ending it all ornament rings too, bought with his life. These fire shall devour, flame shall cover, no earlman shall wear a jewel memento, nor beautiful virgin have on her neck rings to adorn her, but wretched in spirit bereaved of gold gems, she shall oft with others be exiled and banished, since the leader of liegemen hath laughter forsaken, mirth and merriment. Hence many a war spear cold from the morning shall be clutched in the fingers, heaved in the hand, no harp music's sound shall waken the warriors, but the wan-coated raven fane over fey ones freely shall gabble, shall say to the eagle how he sped in the eating, when, the wolf his companion, he plundered the slain. So the high-minded hero was rehearsing these stories loathsome to hear. He lied as to few of weirds and of words. All the war troop arose then, neath the eagle's cape sadly betook them, weeping and woeful, the wonder to look at. They saw on the sand then soulless a lying, his slaughter-bed holding, him who rings had given them in days that were done. Then the death-bringing moment was come to the good one, that the king, very warlike, wielder of Vedders, with wonder-death perished. First they beheld there a creature more wondrous, the worm on the field, in front of them lying, the foeman before them, the fire-spewing dragon, ghostly and grisly guest in his terrors, was scorched in the fire. As he lay there he measured 50 of feet, came forth in the night-time to rejoice in the air, thereafter departing to visit his den. He in death was then fastened, he would joy in no other earth-hollowed caverns. There stood round about him beakers and vessels, dishes were lying and dear-valued weapons, with iron rust eaten, as in earth's mighty bosom, 1,000 of winters there they had rested. That mighty bequest, then with magic was guarded, gold of the ancients, that earlman not any the ring-hall could touch, save ruling God only. Sooth king of victories gave whom he wished to, he is earth-folk's protector, to open the treasure, e'en to such among mortals as seemed to him proper. Then 'twas seen that the journey prospered him little, who wrongly within had the ornaments hidden down neath the wall. The warden erst slaughtered some few of the folk troop. The feud then thereafter was hotly avenged. 'Tis a wonder where, when the strength-famous trooper has attained to the end of life days allotted, then no longer the man may remain with his kinsmen where mead cups are flowing. So to Beowulf happened when the ward of the barrow, assaults, he sought for. Himself had no knowledge how his leaving this life was likely to happen. So to doomsday, famous folk leaders down did call it with curses, who accomplished it there, that man should be ever of ill deeds convicted, confined in foul places, fastened in hell bonds, punished with plagues, who this place should e'er ravage. He cared not for gold, rather the wielder's favor preferred he first to get sight of. Wiglaf discoursed then, Wistan his son. Oft many an earlman on one man's account must sorrow endure. As to us it hath happened. The liege lord beloved we could little prevail on, kingdom's keeper, counsel to follow, not to go to the guardian of the gold hoard, but let him lie where he long was, live in his dwelling till the end of the world. Met we a destiny hard to endure. The hoard has been looked at, been gained very grimly, too grievous the fate that the prince of the people pricked to come thither. I was therein, and all of it looked at. The building's equipments, since access was given me, not kindly at all entrance permitted within under earth wall. Hastily seized I, and held in my hands a huge weighing burden of hoard treasures costly, hither out bear them to my liege lord beloved. Life was yet in him, and consciousness also. The old one discoursed then much and mournfully, commanded to greet you, bade that remembering the deeds of your friend lord ye build on the fire hill of corpses a lofty burial barrow, broad and far famous, as mid-world dwelling warriors he was widely most honored while he revelled in riches. Let us rouse us and hasten again to see and seek for the treasure, the wonder neath wall. The way I will show you, that close ye may look at ring gems sufficient and gold in abundance. Let the bier with promptness fully be fashioned when forth we shall come, and lift we our lord then, where long he shall tarry, well-beloved warrior, neath the wielder's protection. Then the son of Weistan bade orders be given, mood valiant man, to many of heroes, holders of homesteads, that they hither from far, leaders of liegemen, should look for the good one with wood for his pyre. The flame shall now swallow, the wan fire shall wax, the warrior's leader, who the reign of the iron often abided, when, sturdily hurled, the storm of the arrows leapt o'er linden wall, the lance rendered service, furnished with feathers followed the arrow. Now the wise mooded son of Wistan did summon the best of the braves from the band of the ruler seven together. Neath the enemy's roof he went with the seven, one of the heroes who fared at the front, a fire-blazing torchlight bare in his hand. No lot then decided who that hoard should havoc, when hero earls saw it lying in the cavern uncared for entirely, rusting to ruin. They rued then but little, that they hastily hence hauled out the treasure, the dear-valued jewels. The dragon eke pushed they, the worm o'er the wall, let the wave-currents take him. The waters enwined the ward of the treasures. Their wound in gold on a wain was uploaded, a mass unmeasured. The men-leader off then, the hero hoary, to Walesness was carried. The folk of the Geatmen got him then ready a pile on the earth strong for the burning, behung with helmets, hero knights' targets, and bright shining burnies, as he begged they should have them. Then wailing war heroes, their world-famous chieftain, their liege lord beloved, laid in the middle. Soldiers began then to make on the barrow, the largest of dead fires, dark o'er the vapor. The smoke cloud ascended, the sad roaring fire, mingled with weeping, the wind roar subsided, till the building of bone it had broken to pieces, hot in the heart, heavy in spirit. They mood sad lamented the men-leader's ruin, and mournful measures the much-grieving widow. The men of the Weders made accordingly a hill on the height, high and extensive, of sea-going sailors to be seen from a distance, and the brave one's beacon built where the fire was, in 10 days' space, with a wall surrounded it, as wisest of world folk could most worthily plan it. They placed in the barrow rings and jewels, all such ornaments as erst in the treasure war-mooded men had won in possession. The earnings of earlmen to earth they entrusted, the gold to the dust, where yet it remaineth as useless to mortals as in foregoing eras. Round the dead mound rode then the doughty in battle, bairns of all 12 of the chiefs of the people. More would they mourn, lament for their ruler, speak in measure, mention him with pleasure, weighed his worth and his warlike achievements mightily commended, as 'tis meet one praise his liege lord in words and love him in spirit, when forth from his body he fares to destruction. So lamented mourning the men of the Geats, fond-loving vassals, the fall of their lord, said he was kindest of kings under heaven, gentlest of men, most winning of manner, friendliest to folk troops and fondest of honor.